and just the right volume, I think.
It's quite gainy, quite deep.
I am deep.
Oh my.
That was a very good George Takei reference.
Wow.
The wonders of OBS. But am I too loud, or yeah, I think I might be a little bit.
I think you're just fine.
Okay.
Do you guys want to start early? Let people come in just because we got nothing to do.
So Zero G has asked in the text chat about the topic, convincing us that a god or a goddess exists, and wondering if we actually want to be convinced. I would say it's a matter of being open to being convinced. We're not closed to it. So it's not that we want to be, because that would be a bias, and we're trying to not be biased either way in this. We will raise serious objections, but we'll definitely give you your chance to explain your case.
Well, I would say yes.
Oh, yeah, I think if you're a skeptic, you want to know what is true.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
You guys in the chat can hear me, but
no.
Yeah, skeptic will determine we'll try to discern truth from falsehood, and default to not knowing which is the case.
Testing. Can you guys hear my mic now? It was not working for a moment.
Yes, we can hear you, TJump. You're coming through loud and clear.
I would say I would want to be convinced if it was true. That would be the answer. So if it's true there is a God, then I would want to be convinced of as many true things and a few false things. So if it's true there's a God, then yes, I would like to be convinced. Would you guys mind starting early, since we have literally nothing to do and we're just sitting here doing nothing?
We're actually going to be silent for about 5 minutes before it starts, just because the whole audience isn't here yet. And we've already announced to the audience we will be starting at 0800. So we've got another 7 minutes to go.
So?
Yeah, I also have the live stream scheduled and whatnot, so we're trying to be on schedule with everything.
Hello, Dreeched. How's it going from the Twitch chat? That's not what I want. Rich, how's it going? Hey. Hey. Orbital Nomad, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Yes, Surrender Monkey. My shirt has no sleeves. This is my plasma shirt. More guitar videos. I haven't played guitar in a while.
You're American. You have the right to bear arms. I usually don't eat when I'm going to be on a live stream, but my girlfriend just brought me deviled eggs. I think that's appropriate.
Pity you can't share.
That's you assuming that I would want to.
That's true.
All mine. It's all mine.
One of those guys that asks somebody, yeah, I'll come to your party. Do you have space in your refrigerator for a large container of deviled eggs? And I also want to make sure that you know I'm not planning to share them with anyone.
I mean, you're American too. You must have heard the term going Dutch.
Sure. I didn't think that applied to hoarding deviled eggs, though. But I guess I know to be a lot more liberal with that term. So, okay.
We need like a pre-show or something, so we don't just to sit here and do nothing.
Banter?
Has the fan disappeared from my background noise, Jefferson?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, that does sound a little clearer. And you were coming through loud and clear before. It was just that kind of faint, kind of like machine fan kind of sound in the background.
Yeah, I had the laptop close to my mic so I could type directly on its keyboard and get this all re-advertised all over Discord and whatnot.
Gotcha.
Hey, Chris. On Twitter, nice. I do stream there. But only get like 60 views or something.
So I see there's a prayer in the chat. If you're Christian, you might want to check your Bible. The lying ass senile interloper in the White House was put there by your God, according to the Bible, and you should listen to him. Just
Thank you to everybody for tuning in. We're going to be starting in about 1 minute.
Hey, Luke, 3 a.m. in Australia. That's early. Have I heard about Trojan sores? I've not heard of that from Rationality. Thank you for the super chat, Chris. Appreciate it. Did the Muslim guy cancel? Yes, the Muslim guy canceled. Modern day debate.
were you going to debate?
Friday there was supposed to be me versus some Muslim guys, Islam true, something like that.
Not a familiar one.
What?
I did after so during the last time I did have a chat with one of the Muslims that came on stage. He looks like a really nice guy, and I'm hoping to have a chat with him sometime soon.
Okay, so we're going to be starting now. I'll just introduce the show here.
Okay, I'll mute.
Thank you to everybody for tuning in. This is our panel of atheists who, and sometimes we have a deist joins us. He uses the Kurt Russell icon, but normally he's not here right now. Maybe he'll pop in later. But And we're very glad that everybody has joined us. Sorry about the background noise there. We are going to be taking people from the audience to try to convince us that a god or a goddess exists. And we're very happy that everybody is here. There are a number of people who've been in the audience already for some time, waiting while we've been getting things set up. We're going to start with Jarl, because I believe Jarl has had the first instance of raising his hand, indicating that he or she would like to speak with us. Just a moment while I get Jarl logged in here. Hello, Jarl. Are you there? You can join us. Hello, Jarl. Welcome. And what do you have for us to convince us that a god or a goddess exists?
Like, I know that people are usually pretty set in their religious beliefs once they have them, so the chances of me actually convincing you are pretty low, but I do have a question. So, let's just say that there is no god or goddess out there. Yeah, there's no gods. What happens when a person dies? Where does their soul go? What happens to that consciousness?
Could be lots of things. Like there could be an afterlife without a god just fine. So anything that could happen with a god could happen without a god. But the most plausible explanation is that nothing happens. You go exactly the same place you were before you were born, which is nowhereness. And that's about it.
Yeah, but saying that there's an afterlife, wouldn't that also still be kind of like, that would still be kind of religion?
No.
That's still not really that atheistic.
Well, there can be. So, like, there are many different possibilities. God has no evidence, and anything that can happen if a God existed could happen without a God, like a naturalistic pantheism. So you can have an afterlife with just a field or a dharma or whatever. So you can have heaven without God just fine. And so there's no evidence that actually indicates God does anything. And you can have all of the benefits without the God just by believing in spiritual atheism, because many atheists do believe in spiritualism. Without the God. So there's no benefit of the God whatsoever. You can get all of it without the God, but the most plausible explanation is that you just disappear.
Yeah, but there's also no real evidence for like an afterlife either, because no one can come back from death and say what they saw.
Right.
Unless you're the Queen of England, because then you can do that.
Right. So there's no evidence of an afterlife. I agree.
So yeah, that's all I really had to say. I just wanted to ask like what comes after death. That's all.
Yeah, I guess
I'll let the next guy stand up.
Oh, I was just going to say, I guess that would depend on whether the afterlife is dependent on this deity, which TJump already highlighted. So thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Also, it's pronounced Jarl, not Jarl.
Jarl, thank you for correcting me.
Hey, actually, it's pronounced Jarl. Okay, goodbye.
I'm Jarl of Winterfell. Uzro Da.
So next on our list is a name I'm having a little trouble pronouncing, S.J. Runchun. I hope I've got that right. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Welcome to our panel, and we're curious on whether you're going to provide us to convince us of a god or a goddess existing. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Yeah, it's just Chun. You can just call me Chun. So thank you. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and show that it's epistemologically impossible to be an atheist or to be into atheism. There's no way to actually get towards that position. And if I can
just to interrupt, what do you mean by epistemologically impossible? What does that combination of words mean?
It means that whatever atheism claims to be, that you can't actually get towards that position. You can't actually understand it. It could be true. It very much could be true, but it means that we as humans can't necessarily, we cannot go towards it, or we can't hold that position. And we could think we do if we sacrifice it and say it's not anti-theism, or it's not theism if it's not related to theism, because theism is really fundamental. But if you say it's just a social construct like a video game company or something like that, then yeah, you could be an atheist. Yeah, certainly. But that's as a social construct. In terms of it being atheist, in terms of what theism is, the universal ontology, the ethics, et cetera, the things which are more fundamental and which are supposed to inform the material aspects, the metaphysics itself. If you're trying to refer to it as that, you can't get to that. So it's
Okay.
epistemologically impossible.
So atheism means that it's somebody who doesn't believe in any deities. Now, there are some atheists who also hold the position that there are no deities. I'm not one of those. I just don't believe. And others here on the panel can speak for themselves on this, but you did leave the definition of atheism wide open on this. So, yeah, you're going to have to be a little more clear on this to make a cogent argument, I think.
Sure. Yeah. So I suppose one thing that I'd like to specifically say about that, whether you believe it or not, isn't really super interesting. Like to us, it's not super. It doesn't bring anything to a conversation. Like
it doesn't matter whether it's interesting to you. It is a characteristic of who I am, and that's a fact. So
no, that's true.
This is a non sequitur.
No. This is. Go ahead.
Can I give my two cents? So I live in a country that's predominantly atheist or non-believers. My position is that atheism is the default position. It's what you have until someone convinces you that a God exists.
Let me try.
There's no way to get to atheism as long as you're not convinced that a God exists. You're an atheist.
Sure. So I wouldn't assert that at all. I just want to be very clear. When we're talking about atheism, we're specifically talking about the ontological claims that there's no God that exists, or that they're gods. We have to separate the ontological claims from the epistemological.
That's a straw man. So no, you don't get to define other people's position. When they define themselves as atheists, they get to tell you what they mean, not the other way around. I'm happy to take the position God does not exist, and I can justify that just fine.
Sure. Well, I might end up, just to skip over everything, I'm not telling them what their definitions should be or anything like that. I'm just saying what the ontological claim is. I don't like, you can have 99% belief, agnostic, Gnostic, you can have all these different, whether it makes you hungry or whatever epistemological aspects that are instantiated off that object for you. I'm not super interested in that, and I don't think that's something that we should talk about. Whether you believe it or not, wow, cool, you believe it. Whether somebody, that's not going to be something. Wow, that's not.
Do you have like an argument? Are you just arguing that we can't have certainty God doesn't exist? Is that like everything you're saying? Something like that?
No. No. The topic is does a god or goddess exist? I'm saying I'm trying to make the point that you cannot get to the opposite position of that. So that's what the thing is. Now, if you believe it or whatever, that's perfectly fine. I believe this or I don't believe this. You can be agnostic.
I have a justified belief God does not exist because all ideas start as imaginary until demonstrated otherwise. No evidence has been presented for a God. Therefore, it's rational to conclude it's just imaginary thing made up like humans, like in all the other stupid ideas humans have come up with. Therefore, I'm justified in believing it's nothing but a silly imaginary idea made up by humans.
Sure, but you understand.
Also, the topic is convince us a God exists. The other one is a subtopic. So why not go with that?
Well, okay, so I can do that. So I can convince you a God exists by showing you that you can't have the opposite position, and then show what the corollary for that is. I think we'll just go into that. I think that's
Chun, if I may ask, what is like, how do you define like belief? Because like a logical contradiction, like, that logical contradictions can't exist, like a one-sided, like a one-ended stick or a married bachelor. So if the entity that you're speaking of, or the God that you're speaking of, is defined in a logically contradictory way, and therefore it can't exist, can you still believe that the thing can't exist if you know it can't exist?
I don't think you can believe something that you don't know. Belief is in. I know people.
If you know it can't exist, can you still believe that it?
I don't think you can. No, not
okay.
Unless,
so if the Christian God, just for example, just throwing it out as an example, if the Christian God is defined in such a way that makes it logically contradictory, logical contradictions can't exist, then you know that it can't exist. and you can't believe in it, and atheism is a lack, or is a disbelief in gods or God, in a god or gods. So therefore, you are an atheist.
No. Okay. One second. You're like jumping like 500 steps and taking too much things. And it's my position to convince that it's a god or goddess exists. So in this sense, how would you say? I'm trying to say that you can't get to the atheist position. And
I just explained how you could.
I'm trying to explain that that's not.
Okay,
how
could
it
you
is.
stop telling us what you're trying to? Could you just present
position.
your argument? Present argument from its conclusion. Go.
Okay. So, anyways, okay. So if you have like physics, y'all would argue that's a propositional statement in a sense. It's propositional. It says that everything fundamentally, the material world is fundamentally measurable and understandable in matter or energy. That's a propositional. How would y'all define that?
I want an argument. Like, what is your argument?
Sure. Okay. So fine. So you have that, and then you have like quantum mechanics or something like that. You have quantum mechanics, classical
argument.
mechanics.
Argument. What is the argument?
I have to explain it. You have to say the axioms. Okay. So you have to get the axiom. Axiom 1. That's what that is. And then you have things that are like quantum mechanics, which are constructions of, or classical mechanics, or general relativity, etc. So if you try to contradict one of those or try to show they're wrong in any case, then you're never going to actually get towards the position that not all physics exists. You're only going to get to the position that quantum mechanics doesn't exist. Now, this is not the same. There's no symmetry inside this position. So this is where the negative, this is me saying how you can't get to that position. If you say quantum mechanics does exist, and then mechanics, which is a synonym for physics in the sense, quantum physics, etc., then you're asserting necessarily that physics exists. So there's necessarily, whenever you assert something, you necessarily lean towards it, but there's nothing that can get you to the opposite. There's no variable or anything like that which can get you to the position that physics itself does not exist.
Sure there is. We can say we're like in the Matrix or supernatural or idealism is true, then all physics would be wrong.
Well, no, physics would still exist under it, or a conception of physics.
No.
Well, there'd have to be physics inside there, period, even if you don't understand the base. Yes, that's how it is.
Idealism is literally the position.
There's no physics in Matrix.
Stop. Idealism is the position consciousness is fundamental. So you can get rid of all of physics, say it's just a product of the mind, and that there's something else more fundamental than physics. Nothing you're saying is an argument. What is your argument?
Okay. So physics, you can't. Physics would still be inside it. There'd be a conception of physics.
No, I already proved that wrong. Idealism says physics is not inside of it.
Just let me speak. Just let me speak.
You've been speaking for 10 minutes and saying nothing.
You've interrupted me the whole time.
That's because you've said nothing the entire time.
Let me speak. Let me speak, Jump. Let me speak, Jump.
Next guy. Get rid of this guy.
No, because I've got to speak. I've got to be able to speak.
Like, he said nothing for like 10 minutes.
Okay.
He also didn't address the logical contradiction there. I wanted, because he just was like, no, you're jumping way ahead. I was like, no, that's the conclusion.
I was going to ask if that actually that convinced him of Christianity, or if he's already convinced of Christianity or whatever his God is, and these are just arguments that he uses to bolster his faith that's already there.
Yeah, it seemed to me that he was trying to lay out the battlefield, so to speak, beforehand. And, it's great to come and define some terms and what you mean when you're going to argue something. But TJump is right. It's important to get to the argument. And this is where, we've already went through what different meanings of atheism are, and then he got into physics and quantum physics a little bit. We just did not get to the argument, unfortunately. But we're going to move on to our next guest. Epic is the next one in queue waiting. So welcome, Epic, to our panel. And what do you have to present for us to convince us that a god or goddess exists? Welcome.
Oh, hey, thanks. And as an agnostic, I think if I can convince you there's a God, then maybe I would believe. I have a
you're agnostic, so you have something else to bring to the table. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I do. I think I might. All right, so I would say that if there was a God, let's see if I can convince you. God is what is. If there's a God, God would just be is what is. And let's think of the Earth, for example. It has life on it. The whole entire surface of the Earth is covered with life, just about everywhere. Even in geysers and things they find life, and in ice they find life, in the atmosphere. Life's everywhere. Okay, and so like the cheeseburgers we ate last week became us, and then later, the cheeseburgers leave us, let's say, and well, that used to be us, whatever comes out. And so we're moving through our environment, this surface of the earth, and the environment is moving through us. And basically, it just is what it is. And like everything that is God. And without the sun, for example, there would be no life here on earth. I think that we know there could be, but as far as I know, there wouldn't be any life on earth without the sun. So we could even call the sun God, but I would just say simply that God is what is, and that's all. We don't know anything else than that.
Why would you say that? Like, I define God as a non-physical mind that created the universe. So I'd say nothing is God.
I wouldn't say that at all. Yeah, I would be more like just agnostic about it and just say God is what is. If you want to call something God, just don't capitalize it.
God that way.
Yeah, I know that the theists don't like that.
Why do you define it that way? Because if I said God is a potato, that seems like equally as coherent as you just saying God is everything.
Because I think that God's a concept anyway. We might as well make it accurate. And if somebody wants to say God, we can at least let them be coherent.
Well, normally we want to use words that convey meaning to the conversation. So you want to use words the same way everyone else does so that what you're saying actually makes sense. Just changing the definition of God to be the universe doesn't accomplish anything. It just makes the conversation more muddled and confusing. So when Christians mean God, and what most people mean by God, we say does not exist. And just changing the definition for God to mean potato or rock or something doesn't progress the conversation, just makes them confused and makes you look silly.
Well, there's a guy named Robert Ingersoll, and he said that we should and could, why would there be a problem to just call it God?
Becca, I'm just going to read something that's from Google when I look up the definition of God, and it says, in a superhuman being or spirit worshipped as having power over nature or human fortunes, a deity. So the way you're defining it, it sounds kind of more like something Deepak Chopra might say, where God is everything and everything is God. That sounds kind of more like from there. That's not really helping us. Like, what's understood as God or even a goddess would be kind of more in line with what TJump just said and what I just defined, I think. And that's kind of what we're looking for.
I think we're really actually close, and I'll leave. But I would simplify it like Einstein says, if you can't simplify it, you don't understand it well enough. Einstein, I would say God is what is, and it does exist. Existence exists. And so there you go. And if you call it God, boom.
So when you say God is what is, well, okay, God is a deity. Okay, that I can go along with. That doesn't mean that I'm convinced that it's real. So it's like saying...
I didn't say a deity. I just said, literally just call existence God.
Okay, it's just like it would be like saying Gandalf is a wizard. Okay, I agree with that. I don't believe Gandalf is real, though.
Okay, let's do this, because I've done this for years, and I'm just thinking...
Thank you for the super chat, Jacob.
It just came to mind. What if there was a God, just hypothetically, there was a God, and nobody knew, even including that God, didn't know where it came from? It's still, God is what is. I mean, trumps that. See, there'd be a problem of the infinite regression with all these religions. And I'm just saying, if you're honest and stay agnostic about it and realize that we're here, and that's all we know is we're here and we exist. And if we call that God, then great. It's the only real God.
Why do you think there can only be one?
Well, there could only be one God, as far as I'm concerned, because there's no evidence of anything else. There's no evidence of... Nobody's ever shown it to be the case that any religion has ever been verified and validated and real, or else they'd win the Nobel Prize.
I agree with that. I'm just curious why you would prefer one deity over a group of multiple deities in this case.
I don't. I'm just trying to see if I could convince you, and then if you were convinced, then maybe I would, because I'm just agnostic. So.
To me, it seems like he's using the word God just to mean reality. That seems like what he's doing. He doesn't mean God at all. So it seems to be just a confusion of the language. Like, you're not making progress when you do that. You're just wasting people's time. Like, no,
But
that's
no, I
not
wasn't
what...
wasting. I was quoting Ingersoll, the great agnostic.
And he was wasting people's time too. Like, changing the definition of God accomplishes nothing in conversations. Like, if I change the definition of potato to something not potato, all I have to do is, all it accomplishes is me wasting more time trying to explain to people what this new word means. It doesn't accomplish anything in the conversation.
Yeah, I do agree that pretending that some unproven thing made everything by guessing it and using leaps of faith in things is wrong. So yeah, and incorrect.
Well, I'd go one step further. I'd say you using the term God to mean reality is incorrect. It is wrong to do that. It is wrong to use a word that has a very common usage, which most people understand, for something completely different. When people do that, it's called obfuscation and just ambiguity. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, and you shouldn't do that.
Okay, now one last question, and genuinely, I'm not trolling. Okay, when I go walk along the beach and then I go through a field and I find an apple and I'm moving through my environment and the apple moves through me, the environment moves through me, and I see myself in this environment here, and I call this, I'm living in this environment, I call everything God because it's greater than me. Could that be a definition of a God? Or is it known as, like, would that be witchcraft or paganism or something like that? Or
You're focusing on one particular characteristic of the god, because most deities, most goddesses or gods are defined as having characteristics such as omniscience, knowing everything, omnipotence, having all capabilities and all power to do anything they want to do, and they're omnichronological. It means they permeate all of time. They're omnipresent. They're absolutely everywhere, even where we don't expect it. So there's all these kinds of characteristics. You're focusing on one of those. Those characteristics could be argued as all being greater than human beings, but so what? That doesn't actually provide any demonstrable justification for it, I think.
Okay. The closest thing I can come to omnipresent and invisible thing is the space between the subatomic particles of atoms, but that's as far as I'm going to quit.
That's called the space between the subatomic particles.
Okay, I think I've wasted enough time, but it was fun. Thank you.
And thanks for bringing up Ingersoll Rand. It was a delight talking with you. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good one.
Okay, the next person in the queue here is L1LTH360. I suspect that's a clever way of spelling Lilith 360. Thank you for joining us, and welcome.
Hi. Okay. So first, I'd like to say that I'm not a normally a normal Western theist. First, I'd like to state I hold no faith, only conviction. Second...
Okay, can I just stop you right there? We don't consider theists to be abnormal, no matter what the religion or what the beliefs are, as far as this stuff goes. So please don't call yourself not normal, because we're going to object to that.
I heard what you said earlier, and you said that atheism is the standard position, which I disagree with because I think the existence of a god is a priori. But for me, I believe in a goddess.
How?
How? Okay. Well,
because I made that statement, so maybe I should address it.
Yes. Okay. So, God is a priori, or the existence of a higher power. Say it is a priori knowledge.
Think of the super chat, Geo Sam.
Babies see things that are designed, and they immediately assume a creator. All right, that's what a creation must have a creator, because that's basic knowledge. But
how do you know that a baby makes that determination? You're talking a newborn baby, I assume.
But first of all, if you have to prove it, it's not a priori anymore. It's it's empirical. But
well, it's a positive claim. I mean, Randolph's correct. It's a positive claim, and I'm kind of curious as to where you got the information. How you came up with that.
I can give an example of things. There's monkeys are found to worship something. There's always the thing is within all of history. Doesn't matter what religion, there is always the existence of a unseen force, and the only people that deviate from that is the creation of Christianity. and yes, even old Jews believed in a unseen force. So the creation of Christianity was the only thing that rejected this.
Okay, well, that would be evident in adults, right? That would be evident in cultures that were established by populations. But it doesn't speak to like the a priori knowledge of infants.
Okay, well, yeah. So no, if you look at something that is created, you assume a creator. So if you look at the Earth, you would assume a creator. That's how religions popped up in the first place, because people.
The idea of the unseen force is being believed in. Gravity, to me, is an unseen force, normal in its normal state, and I believe
by unseen,
that,
I mean.
But I guess I'm taking things too literally. I think earlier you were trying to get to saying that you believe in a goddess, if I heard you correctly. So
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Okay, so feel free to tell us about this, if you like.
There's a couple of reasons. I'm not gonna really get into why I think the deity is feminine, but necessarily because this is about convincing you that one exists at all.
Sure, but I'm happy to talk about. We're all happy to talk with you about a goddess. This sounds really interesting because most of the people that we speak to are talking about a god. So
also, this is very funny that this popped up because yesterday I went to one of the biggest Christian apologetics conference in America. So
were there a lot of people there, and how did that go?
There were tons of people there. There was this guy who played in the movie God's Not Dead 2. He also popped up in like almost every single episode of Dateline NBC. He wrote the books Cold Case Apologetics and Person of Interest. There were tons of breakout rooms and panels. It was
J. Warner Wallace.
Yes, J. Warner Wallace.
So before you said that the evidence of God is the fact that babies see design in things, like why do you think that's evidence of God and not evidence of type 1 and type 2 errors caused by evolution?
No, it's okay. So
can I also interject that not all babies apparently see that, because I've never had the concept of a creator. I grew up as an atheist. I've never thought of the world as something that was created by something.
It's the same situation for me, by the way. Yeah.
Someone added me in that Heathen Hangout. Hold on.
So just to clarify,
if I find something that seems created, it is harder to argue that it came about on its own than someone created it.
But how do you in that statement you make the assumption it was created? So when you're talking about
it is okay.
So like TJump said, TJump's question was salient right there. It was, how do you know that it was not a type 1 or type 2 error?
What is a type 1 or type 2 error?
So type 1 and type 2 errors are if you hear a rustle in the bushes back in the, like when we were evolving tens of thousands of years ago, if someone thought it was a lion, they would run away and survive. If someone thought it was just the wind and didn't run away, they would get eaten. And so because of that, the humans predecessors that survived are the ones that always thought anything they didn't know about, any sound they made, anything they couldn't explain, they always thought it was an agency, a mind of some kind, because it ended up keeping them alive longer just to run away if they thought it was a lion. Therefore, we have these hyperactive agency detection systems where we see design in all kinds of things that have no design, like when we see lightning created by Thor, or volcanoes created by gods, or echoes.
Ancient,
or where does the wind come from?
Ancient paganism is there.
And pareidolia.
Ancient paganism is there because it was stories made to describe things that had a lot of deeper scientific meaning to children, and that's why it was why those stories and stuff was created.
Well, I'm talking about before paganism. I'm talking about literally as we evolved. People always see agency in everything because of these fallacies. So this is before paganism existed.
Well, maybe that's not an error. Maybe that's correct. Because here's the thing, though. What is it helping you survive to believe in a god? How is that helping you survive?
Well, again, if you hear a rustle in the bushes and you think it's a god or a leprechaun or anything that could cause you harm and you don't understand, you run away from it. So if you think there's agency in something, you run away. Whereas if you think it's just the wind, you don't run away. So if you think agency is in things, then you're more likely to run away from it. And if it's unknown, you're more likely to survive because unknown things used to kill us a lot. Curiosity killed
I'm
the
not
cat.
arguing it's an agency. I'm arguing that it's a priori.
So again,
it is.
I'm saying that what you say is a priori isn't. It's not a priori. It's a posteriori. It's a thing that comes about through evolution because people who thought things had agency survived more. And it's called a type 1 and type 2 errors. Just to clarify, type 1 and type 2 errors are a technical term. I didn't name them. It was named in psychology. It's the actual technical name of these things. So this phenomenon has a name in the field of psychology and philosophy. It's called type 1, type 2 errors. And we know it's the case in evolution for pretty much all design inferences.
Okay, but that doesn't apply to everything. And like let me say that here's a better way to prove the existence of not exactly a god in the sense of I heard you guys giving a definition earlier, didn't you? Not exactly in the sense of that. Think of it like the Tao. I'm sure you've know about the Tao, right?
I am familiar with Taoism, and Taoism, just in case people are wondering, it is a polytheistic religion. But perhaps, why don't you go ahead and
modern
make
Taoism, kind of. It's
modern
without
modern-
the like mixing of like Chinese mythology.
Modern Taoism is basically just another way of saying that you're interested in the Taoist philosophy without all the religious aspects. But
Okay, no, what I'm trying to get at is it's more like just the Tao and Brahman, like that kind of feel. If you see where I'm going with that.
Just a field of
why don't you lay
God.
it out for us? Because we would like to hear the argument. I know a lot of us have interjected. We'll just give you some time to kind of lay out your argument. Maybe would a minute be enough time for you, do you think?
Sure.
Go ahead. Let's all just listen and hear what your argument is, and you can explain to us.
So, so let's say, all right, let's take a hypothetical here. If there is a planet that is just a bunch of rocks, right, and it's dry, nothing there, and a couple of aliens fly by and they see it's just a bunch of rocks, that's nothing, so they go away. If they come back 50 million years later, and they see life flourishing there, would say it's intelligence. This planet, it has intelligence. So what that means is I believe there is an innate intelligence behind every single cell and organism. And this intelligence, this collective intelligence, is where we all get our it's how we live. It's how anything happens. It's how cells know how to multiply. It's how things know what to do. It's how life knows to flow. And this kind of this collective intelligence comes from somewhere. How would an intelligence come from purely just atoms? How would the atoms know what to do? How would the quarks know what to do in the beginning, if not them having intelligence beforehand? So this collective intelligence has to come from somewhere, and this is why I don't necessarily believe in a. I'm not sure what kind of goddess it is. I know it is a feminine force. I don't know if it's the Western sense of a literal entity, if it's like more like Brahman, the Tao, or anything like that. I know it is a feminine force that started the universe, and that we can gain, not only connection but become one with. Because I'm a mystic, but.
Okay, it seems like you're saying that there needs to be some intelligence for life to be able to form. Well, I'd say no. The reason life formed was because of just determined physical forces, and RNA was formed on clay, which built the first original DNA, which then reproduced to make cells. It didn't know anything. It was just determined by physical forces that we know about.
How would it know to do that? How would it know what to happen? How would that force... There has to be a no.
It doesn't know. It's physics.
It's like
chemistry.
magnets don't know
Does not
anything.
know
They just
anything.
attract. objects, physical shapes can bind together. Like in chemistry, the reason certain chemicals bind to other chemicals is because their shapes fit together, because they have magnetic resonance or an electrochemical bond. It has nothing to do with knowledge. They're physical forces of their properties cause them to bind.
It's an intelligence, because it's because things like, and then it makes cells.
Why are you calling it an intelligence?
Maybe I can.
Is magnetism an
Maybe I can.
intelligence?
Sure,
Maybe
yeah,
I
in a
can
way,
help.
I guess you
Do
could.
you think that Lego bricks are intelligent because they fit into each other?
No.
And that is exactly how chemistry works. See it as
one of the
Lego
other
bricks.
one of the other things that I have trouble with reconciling this is that there are people who are born with varying degrees of intelligence, and there are people who this intelligence wanes throughout their lives as we get older. It's a well-known and well-documented fact that people's IQs decline ever so slightly in most cases, and then once we're dead, all this intelligence seems to be gone. By your reasoning, are you saying that once we're dead and we've decomposed, that intelligence remains?
Yeah, I think what I think happens is we it's kind of like, because I'm not sure. Either there's two different ways that this happens. Either our intelligence stays, which I call the intelligence. It's an energy. It's a ki, chakra, whatever you want to call it, stays here and it goes back to the earth. Either that, or it's our intelligence, our collective consciousness joins with the goddess. We could become one with her.
So how do you draw the line between that being true and just being an explanation for things that we don't understand?
It's not, because these kinds of things aren't. It's not necessarily it's not a scientific thing, because there is a.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking. So there's two options there. That what you believe is the way things are, or what you believe is actually ancient explanations that human beings came up with hundreds of thousands of years ago in order to explain things they didn't currently understand. It's like phenomena that they witness. It's like, oh, why does this happen? And then coming up with reasons as to why, because they don't understand what's actually going on. So it's one of the two. So the question then is, like, how do you?
We still don't understand that.
Well, the question is, how do you? But these things that we do understand them. Now, there are some questions that haven't been answered. Yes, of course, and we may answer them in the future. We may never answer them, but that's neither here nor there. The whole point.
And that's because I think it's because I think science. It's not necessarily science. You can't use science to be able to understand. Because I follow this. I don't know what to call it, school of study, whatever called occultism, and it is the study of the unseen. It is the study of forces that are not necessarily scientific, and by using that way of studying things, you are able to understand these forces, and we do understand.
Yes, but Lilith, the point is that there's obviously something that convinces you that it's true. Okay, It's not as though you can just walk up to the top of a building and say, I have these beliefs and therefore I believe that I can fly and I can jump off this building and then I can fly. This is not the way it works. Okay, so what is it that you have seen? What evidence do you have to support this in order to say these things are true, and it is not just explanations that we came up with hundreds of thousands of years ago in order to explain phenomena that we didn't understand at the time?
Oh, sure. Because I believe in things like energies, and in the way that I'm sure you know what I mean by that, but because I explained it earlier. But I also believe in something called magic, but with a K at the end. It's like different than what, do you guys know?
Curiosity, are you Wiccan or are you Alexandrian?
Okay. Well, I kind of follow Wicca slightly. I'm really just an occultist, but.
Okay, so you've talked about what you believe, all right? And
but
you
here's
talk about
the thing.
but what evidence do you have to support these things that has convinced you?
These exist. There's multiple different things that show that these forces exist. They're a thing. Now people have and the only thing that atheists like say is
Lilith, don't derail. Such as you said, there are many things. What are those things?
Okay, again, like the things like magic chart. Basically just some kind of unseen force. I'm not going to define it. I'm not going to put a thing on it, but there is some kind of force that is not
so
discovered.
What does this force do though? See, this is what's interesting. Like gravity, obviously we can't see gravity,
well,
but
that's not what I'm.
But I know, but I'm just making an analogy. Like gravity, we can't see gravity. We can't grab it and hold it with our hands, but we can detect its effects.
Also, before I go on, someone DM'd me some like transphobic like article while I was talking.
Well, then block him. So
I had the same thing.
So,
I got a question real quick. So it seems like you're saying there is something about nature we can't explain, and then you're going to explain it as energies. So here's something we don't know, therefore it's magic.
No, well, do you understand what magic in the occult sense is? Do you know what it?
Sure.
Yes, I do.
What does that have to do with anything?
That's why I asked you. That's why I asked you if you were Wiccan or if you were Wiccan, if you were Alexandrian, to see like what school of thought that you go by. And you said that you're just an occultist. So that is wide ranging. Are you Levian or like what?
I want to go back.
I follow.
But that's not a rabbit hole. That's a rabbit hole. What I'm saying is that Lilith, you keep dancing around.
Well, I got a question. I had a question that's kind of important here. So it seems like you're saying here's something about nature we can't explain, therefore magic. That seems to be your argument.
It's not there. Okay, no, but it's these. Okay, but what I'm getting at is you have to get a kind of. People have had this practice of going about understanding this because it's existed since forever. Because it's a force. Obviously, they don't go away. Gravity doesn't go away.
What force? I don't see any force. I see no evidence of this whatsoever. It seems like people just made it up. Where's the evidence?
You want me to like send you like articles or whatever?
No, Lilith.
Then what do you want me to do?
You almost addressed it. You said there are things, okay, that are evidence of this, that back up this claim, and I want you to tell us what those things are.
There has been.
What are the effects?
Oh, so you mean what does it do? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So there of course there's lots of study on things like I guess chakra and what it does. And there's been a study on things like qigong and stuff and trying to kind of
qigong, that's what you mean. Yeah.
Yes. It's a practice that actually kind of revitalizes people. It actually helps helps their body, and it's not something that is because I'm sure in the West medicine is seen, or the body is seen as a machine that needs to be gotten going.
This is interesting. You gave me that solid one there. So let me propose something to you. Okay, a brief little thought experiment just to put into this, right? So you what you mentioned is the physiological effects of this. Okay, so let me just throw this down for you real quick. Say, okay, hypothetically, just say I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I pray every day. It's a part of my faith. Okay, I just made it's a part of my daily routine. Then one day I'm in a car accident. Okay, I'm trapped in the car. All right, and they're struggling to get me out. While I'm trapped in the car, I pray. Okay, I pray to my God or whatever I believe in, and the firefighters are able to come in and cut me out of the car with the jaws of life, pull me out, get me to the hospital, and I survive. Now, we know that the physiological effects of meditation are very, very positive. It can lower your blood pressure. It can keep you focused. It can keep you from panicking.
And that's to do with
hang on, Lilith. And it can save your life. Okay, it's what they tell people who are caught in cave-ins. I do a lot of outdoor rock work. So it's what they tell people when they're caught in cave-ins or when you're trapped, to keep yourself calm, focus on one thing, regulate your breathing, keep your blood pressure down, and don't panic. Okay, that's the point. Because when you panic, you use more oxygen. You limit your odds of survival. These are all survival things that we're aware of. So if I'm trapped in the car and they're trying to cut me out with the jaws of life, and I pray, I focus myself, I regulate my breathing, I lower my blood pressure, and I don't panic, and I don't use up too much oxygen, and I survive. Does my survival mean that what I'm praying to exists?
Oh. No, it doesn't.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, but it's not necessarily that. Okay, it's because it is. There's things that are practices that are specifically targeted at, specifically targeted for these, like, things like energies and stuff, and what they do is they work. And
Lilith, you just conceded that just because there is a physiological effect that you can detect doesn't mean that what you're focusing on is an actual thing. No more than just a
what I'm
construct in
trying
your-
to
no
what
more
I'm
than
trying to
just a
say is
construct in
that
your
it's
mind.
not.
No more than just a foci.
No, but okay, listen. But you don't. What you have there is you have something that is okay. You have a explanation. You have an outside for these things are like. They don't have like a like scientific thing attached. It doesn't. It is. So it's based on this. So there's no. I don't know what I'm trying to explain here. I don't know how to explain it. What I'm trying to get at, there's a thing that is not like outside force. Like you can't look at some other part of the body or something that you're doing that is affecting because it's not there.
I've seen lots of studies on Qui-Gon and chakras and energies, and they've all failed. Like they've shown no effect. So I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's not true whatsoever. That's not true whatsoever.
Like,
no.
If you think it works, then publish it in an academic journal and you win a Nobel Prize, you'll get $1 million. So no one's won the $1 million yet.
He's talking about the James Randi.
No,
the James Randi Prize.
The prize for winning the Nobel Prize is $1 million.
Oh, it was $1 million. Okay. Because there's also that Randi Prize has never been claimed.
Yeah, that's a different one. There's been many claims on James Randi's prize, but nobody's actually won it.
Yeah.
Somebody did win it, but that was an April Fool's prank. It turned out to be.
So Lilith, the whole point being is that that when there's evidence, and the whole point is that you believe in a thing because there are effects that you have observed, and that they're consistent enough for you to rely upon them. So that's what we're talking about. Is we're not saying we're not saying just straight up from the get-go, out of the gate, we're not saying it doesn't exist. We're looking at the claim in and of itself and saying, okay, you're saying that this thing exists. Great. You're saying that it can be tapped into by human beings. Great. You're saying that there are demonstrable effects that you can rely on, and that there's like ritual or some sort of thing that you do in order to invoke these things in order to get a demonstrable effect on reality. It's like, okay, great. There's all these things. What are the effects that you are getting, and how are they reliable? Like, how can I develop a predictive model based upon what you're doing? But the problem is, once you go beyond that, you're going to start getting anything. Well, it depends upon how much you believe. It depends upon how much you're willing to just, throw to the ether of confirmation bias. You don't want to investigate it too closely because then you lose your grasp on it. These are problematic.
Well, I understand the thing, but I'm not gonna get into magic because that has to do a lot with intention, and obviously that can cause some like problematic for it, like going against atheistic arguments and stuff. So I'm not gonna talk about that specifically. I'm gonna talk about.
Okay, so how can you determine the difference between this and confirmation bias? If you hold the belief and then you interpret evidence as confirmation of that belief that you already held.
Because you can, because you can do it.
How did you determine it's not confirmation bias?
Because even if you do it and don't believe, it's still going to like happen. It's because it's objective reality. It's
what's going to happen?
Like, for example, like if you do some kind of thing with your energies, I'm not gonna like with a specific practice right now, but you're going to see effects from it, and you're not gonna see
what effects?
Any kind of Whatever. It depends on what you're doing. I just okay.
So the
I just
reason
said
the
I'm not
reason
gonna
I'm
say a
asking,
specific.
like the reason I'm asking is that most of the effects that you see can be explained by just natural processes that we already know about in nature. So you'd have to give some effect that isn't already explained by all the things we know about in nature. That's what I'm asking for. Like what effects do we see that aren't already explained by regular medicine?
Okay. All right. There is a what is it called again? I'm trying to think of where they did it, but there is a study on it was a study on think what it was I'm trying to think of like the name real quick. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to remind everybody we've spent quite a lot of time on this conversation, which has been great, by the way, Lilith. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. We want to try to wrap this up pretty soon because there are other people in the audience who would like to speak as well.
Yeah, sure. So there was this. All right. So what happened was, all right, a group of I think what it was like university. I don't know, student people like that represented the university went and to try see the effects of Eastern medicine, and what they did, of course, they didn't believe it because they were skeptical, yeah, yada yada. What they did is they went there, and then they tried the practices. What they found was it actually not only it helped them. I don't want to say that because you could explain that with, but it literally like there was their muscle pains like went away. Like their what happened was what I was gonna say earlier is like they could think clearer, but you could that's
I could chime in on that because I've had something similar, and what I then used to do was a muscle relaxing exercise, and it absolutely works. And you can the exact same thing in a slightly different shape are found in some religions as a form of meditation or the fact that those things work can be scientifically explained because it's just an exercise you do to relax, and your muscle pains will go away because you might be contracting muscles unconsciously, and by doing an exercise like that, you will train yourself to relax those muscles. So that would absolutely work.
It'd be no different than chewing willow bark for a headache.
If you have the study, you could post it in the chat so we can look at it. That'd be great. And then
yeah, sure. If I could find it, I knew I had it somewhere.
So yeah, go ahead
anytime.
Yeah, go ahead and try to find that, and we can move on to the next caller, and we'll get back to you.
By the way, Lilith, if you post the study, also send it to me privately, and I can put it in the YouTube video description later as well, because we're also on YouTube, so other people who are watching this video can take a look and decide for themselves as well.
Yeah, sure. So you want me to stay or leave? Or
well, we don't want to make you feel like we're kicking you out or anything, but we've spent a lot of time here, and it has been a great conversation. We really did enjoy speaking with you, and I will say that I heard a lot of interesting things from you, but I'm left unconvinced that a goddess exists, but I really appreciated the challenge. Thank you very much. So our next audience member who's going to be joining us is Aura Seal. I hope I'm saying that right. Oh, where did Aura Seal disappear to? I'm sorry. Oh, there you go. Discord's moving people around. Aura Seal, Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And what would you like to present to us for convincing us that a god or a goddess exists? Welcome.
How's it going, guys? It's nice to meet you all. I've been listening since about the start of this, so I've written down some notes just from either what you guys have already talked about or some things that are thoughts that I had along the way.
Great.
I think I wanted to start out by asking a question and addressing all of our biases here. I'll say, first of all, I am a Christian, and a part of a argument that I've heard on
if I may ask, any particular denomination or
I'm non-denominational.
Okay, just check. Thank you.
Just Bible reader. Okay. So
I'm a Bible reader too.
An argument. Sorry about that.
I'm a Bible reader too.
I didn't hear. Yeah, exactly.
Me too.
So, an argument that I've had from some of my atheist friends, and you guys may affirm this argument as well, is a lot of religious people have fallen on hard times before they were religious, and it's those hard times that have drove them to a belief in God. And I believe that it's fair to say that for some of these people, it is specifically because they wanted to believe. I think this is a fair enough argument that because someone wanted to believe in God, they believe in God.
I think that this is a fair observation, that this is something that does happen. And during hard times, I'll also point out there are people who end up leaving religions because when people are faced with hard times, it can cause them to rethink their lives. And so you will see people moving in both directions.
What was that you were saying right before Randall interrupted? You said because people want to believe, it's rational for them to believe. Is that what you said?
Maybe not that it's rational, but that is a bias that I think I wanted to get out of the way. Is if God does exist, whether or not he does, do you guys not want to believe in him? Like, would you want to believe in him? As
if he exists,
whatever
I want to know.
Kind of God you're thinking of.
If he exists, I want to know that he exists. That doesn't automatically mean that I would worship the Christian God, and that is because I've read the Bible. I don't think I would ever worship a God like that, but I would want to know if that God exists.
And to follow up with what Peter said, if I was to know that the deity was real or multiple deities are real, then I would my beliefs would fall in line with what I know in my case, and so then I would believe.
Okay, that's fair.
Having
some of the other notes,
obviously the thing is true, and I'm most interested in that, which is in holding, in knowing as many true things as possible and rejecting as many false things as possible. So if what is true is most important, then if this thing does exist, it's a part of the universe or whatever, then I'd want to know it. Doesn't necessarily mean I worship it, but it's not about not wanting to believe. It's about looking for evidence, and the only evidence is there is wholly insufficient. I couldn't make, for example, I couldn't make myself believe I could fly any more than I could make myself. I mean, I can't make myself believe in a God any more than I can make myself believe I could fly. I can't just go up to the building and believe really, really hard that I can fly and then jump off and then I'm good to go. So it's not a matter. It's a matter of is there evidence for this? And the evidence so far, the evidence thus far is wholly insufficient for any God. It's all gods and gods, going all the way back to the gods of animism, all the way up to contemporary religions.
Yeah, for me, I was a Christian for the first 30 years of my life, and as a child growing up, I never doubted the existence of God. It was just kind of a natural assumption. When all the adults in your life, are telling you that being is true, right? You just don't question that. So there's a couple different things that are problematic with this, though, because the purpose of the stage is to talk about whether or not one exists or not. But one of the most important things in the Christian faith is whether or not you believe it's real or not. And that's an issue of faith theologically, which is slightly different. So the faith issue, I never really had an issue with. But when the faith started to go away, if somebody were to ask me, as time went by, do I think that one actually exists or not? Then the answer was probably not. So what I want to know, definitely. But from a Christian perspective, and that this doesn't apply to everybody that's going to be in here, but from a Christian perspective, it's whether or not you believe it.
I just want to say I have high function autism. I couldn't care less what people have for hard times. I don't care about people's emotional biases. I just want to know what the evidence is. So it doesn't make a difference to me one way or the other. Just give me the evidence.
I found it really interesting that you brought up one of the key methods that, or I guess one of the key attributes in people that religion looks for to convince them to basically, there's this void, desperation and fear. And when things are out of control, and essentially that's what religion does, is that they'll target individuals like this, individuals who are in dire straits, individuals that are monetarily, strapped into drug addicts, people who are, the homeless. It's that's people they target to give them the life raft. Because you go to somebody, you go to an atheist where everything, it's like where everything's kind of working out, and they got to, it's like you wouldn't be able to convince them. But someone who is like, I have nothing to hold on to, and I feel like I'm drowning by everyday life. They say, well, here's this life raft. They'll grab onto anything to keep their head above water. And I just found it interesting that you brought that was the first thing you brought up. So continue, Ara, please.
Well, the reason I brought that up was because I think it's important to get the most fairest representation of both things. But someone said it before as well, that it's not just that brings people in, but it's also that kind of desperation that brings people out. And
That was
what
me.
I was kind of, what I was kind of trying to get at with that is that there is a bias that does, affect how we may believe the faith issue. What is important, I would say, is the knowledge issue. It's the evidence, and it's evaluating it rationally. I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus existed. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because it's not. The argument is, does a God exist, not what God exists. I also wanted to ask a question specifically about like evolution. With evolution, we could agree that it does not. Evolution does not. I'm trying to search for the right words. It does not make people evolve to search for truth, right?
I'll help you out.
Also, if you don't mind, I'm going to switch to my computer so I can hear you guys better.
I'll just try to take real quickly. There is such thing as evolutionary psychology, a whole field that gets into the psychological impacts of the evolution of the human brain. That would be a field that may actually speak to how people's decision making is impacted. I'm not sure because I don't know a lot about this field, but I'm going to guess they do delve into that.
Also, evolutionary game theory, in that if drives people, to do things for the common, basically for the population in itself. When essentially positive action, or I'll say cooperative action, that can lead to positive results over long term. And then, of course, if coming up with an explanation for something that can bind people together and bring people together and keep them together as a group, survival in numbers. Well, then that can be seen, that cooperative action, coming up with an explanation that everybody accepts and eases everybody's minds, that can be seen as a cooperative action. So this is how things like religions and God's explaining phenomena can keep people together. So this is kind of where these ideas are born. So evolutionary game theory is an interesting field. I think also you should dive into.
Yeah. So the reason I brought that up specifically was about in regards to whether or not it's true. It seems that most societies that have thrived and prospered are religious, and I can't really say for animals because we can't translate what a dog is actually speaking. I mean, we kind of can actually, but I think we're the only humans are the only species that worship a god, like in the religious sense. Like we have practices and all these things. Most other animals just kind of survive. And if our societies have all kind of prospered under this ideology that there is a god, what do you make of that?
It doesn't matter if a society prospers while holding a belief of God, because I could easily go to some of the Arab countries who are one of the richest on the planet because of their oil. They believe in a different God than you do. And you would probably agree with me that God doesn't exist. So I don't think that has any bearing on things. What I would be curious about is what convinced you that a God exists.
This will get onto another point of mine, but also I will answer that, but I'm also going to ask a question before I answer that, and
Sure.
you don't have to answer immediately. But what if
Go ahead.
the proof? Is it possible that a proof for it can only be found subjectively because of the nature of what we're trying to prove? If it's a spiritual thing we're trying to prove, is it possible that we can't measure it in terms of physical, instruments of like,
I hate proof in this, because proof, there's no proof in science. Proof is a mathematical concept. So
evidence.
What I would, you should go with evidence, and if there is clear evidence for something spiritual, then we could evaluate the evidence. So far, I've never seen anything. I don't even know what people mean when they say spiritual.
So I
elaborate
can
on
say
that?
my what made me become a Christian, if that's okay.
Yeah.
If you still want me to answer
Before you go there, I'd just like to address your point, because
Sure.
if something is interacting with reality, then we should be able to measure that. We should be able to detect that. We should be able to make some kind of objective statement about it. So to just say that would only be subjective, I guess, how we perceive reality, of course, is subjective, but we all seem to perceive it in pretty much the same way. There's gravity holding us to the earth. There's the air that we breathe. We are able to communicate with each other. These are objective facts that we all, insofar as we all agree on them, that we all perceive them consistently. So, I think to just write it off and say it's only subjective would be a mistake, because again, if it's interacting with reality, we should be able to measure that. Otherwise, how would anybody know that it's interacted with reality?
I think to continue.
Sorry,
what
Peter.
Randall
Peter.
said.
Just a sec. Just let Aura respond to me here, and then go ahead.
Oh, no, I wanted to add one thing on, because
you're fine.
If you have evidence is independently verifiable, so it wouldn't be subjective.
Yeah, so I think it kind of pairs well with my last statement, is not necessarily what type of God, but when I was saying, if I say, okay, well, it so happens that most of the nations that have become great powerhouses in the modern world were founded, and they had a deep belief. It was a majority of the population, we would say, had a belief of a god or gods, and because of evolution, if you want to say, evolution found that believing in a god is what made us survive longer. It's what made us had the ability to create these great societies. And is that not effect that we
let
can measure?
him finish. Let him finish. Say that again. Finish your sentence.
Well, that was pretty much it. Is that not a effect that we could measure in the sense that the societies without these
stop interrupting.
beliefs died out?
So the fact that we have beliefs is not evidence that they're true. It's an appeal to consequence fallacy. So no, the fact that they're successful and evolution shows them would not be indicative that they're true. Type 1 and type 2 errors are good examples of things that we know are false, but were beneficial for survival. So there's lots of false beliefs that are beneficial to survival.
Okay. Let me look at some other. Okay, I had one question for you guys. I don't think I asked it already, but what would convince you? Do you know? That there is
predictions. Non-testable
evidence.
predictions. Any type of scientific evidence, anything that you could tell the future about, anything that you'd be able to differentiate imagination from reality.
So
For
could I
me-
give you a
Could
I give you an extreme?
You're asking us, a whole bunch of us, all of us, to give you some explanation here of what would convince us. TJump has just specified. I was about to.
Sorry about that.
No problem. What would do it for me, and I've responded to this before, this question, is that one example would be if this deity was to grant me omniscience and omnipotence for a fortnight so that I could experiment with these things myself and verify this independently on my own. That would definitely do it for me.
Does anyone else want to?
Evidence of any kind, but then again, if this being does exist, then if this being does exist, then it knows what evidence would convince me, and it refuses to give it. So,
Okay, so I was gonna give an extreme and see where you guys lie after this, but say you were in biblical times and hypothetically this did happen. Moses parts the Red Sea by the name and the power of God, and you're walking through it. Would that convince you, or would that not convince you that a God exists?
No, and I can tell you why. I'm an amateur magician.
Yeah, go.
I would need to know how it happened. I mean, I can see people. I'm just as I said, an amateur magician. I've seen people do things that I can't do, and I want to know how they did it. So
one of my I understand that.
convince
One of
me
my
at all.
bullet points was actually, it was going to be, I added to it, but it was just going to be magic. But I added to it. Would you guys feel that this is how I define magic internally, but it is just science that we do not know. It's something that's happening that we can't explain.
we got a Marvel fan.
I would like to offer a different answer. So I'd actually say yes, if there were consistent ways that you could believe in a God gave you some kind of power over the world, like parting the Red Sea. Fortunately, Moses didn't exist. But yes, if you could do those kinds of things and you did them in the name of a God and they didn't happen in any other instance, then yeah, I consider that to be strong evidence of a God for sure.
Okay. So
I'm with TJump.
I'm still curious what convinced you.
Yeah, so I had a very personal experience where I had what I would call as a divine experience. And this is why I analyze, I think everyone does, analyzes the evidence. You shouldn't analyze any evidence and just like believe it because like, well, I already believe it, but you should analyze it afterwards and see if you still believe it. I had a divine experience after a very traumatic. I did a lot of LSD back in the day, and I saw God, and then he handed me over to Satan, and then I was tormented, what I believe, by demons for a lot of months. I had to go to.
Quick question for clarification. Did you experience this while being under the influence of LSD?
Yes.
So that means that your brain wasn't working reliably. So why did you even think that any of that was real?
Well, I suffered from what people, but I don't necessarily call schizophrenia, for a long time after that, where I was what I believed and still kind of believe. I heard voices tormenting me for months and telling me that I was going to hell and all this other stuff. And It was only when
But how did you determine that any of that was real or not your brain playing tricks on you?
So this
as a method of survival, maybe.
Yeah, this is why I asked if I should say evidence, not proof, can only be subjective. If it's a spiritual thing, because I can't, I can't really prove or say anything that'll convince you. I'm not trying to really with the spiritual stuff.
No one's going to ask. No one's going to ask you that. But the thing is,
Peter,
wait a minute, JL.
Hang on a second.
One thing
so
is
the question that's important, Ara, is that you have this experience, and I myself have done quite a bit of LSD. So yes. I'm aware of what tracers are. I understand the lasting effects they can have. I haven't done it in decades, but occasionally, even then, I will still get some minor effects. I'm aware of what lysergic does and what the effects that it has on the brain. I understand, the studies that that Leary was doing in order to try and work with LSD and control doses with mental illness and schizophrenia. So the problem is that we understand these things. We understand that there are lasting effects that these drugs can have on the body. You can get the same things with DMT as well. So my curiosity is, you took this experience that you knew you had when you were in an altered brain state. Your serotonin and your dopamine levels were completely out of whack. Okay, you had this wild experience. I myself have had wild experiences. I've seen the walls breathe. I've seen the black leak out of my eyes. These are all hallucinations.
Yep.
Okay, and then after the fact, you had lasting effects. Okay, now I have had in the past, I have had bad trips that after I'm completely sober and weeks later, that experience will still come back to me because it was so vivid, and it was like, oh, that was so freaky, and it will still kind of shake me up just because it was so freaky what I saw. It doesn't mean that it was real. So how did you determine that what you were experiencing was not merely the lingering effects on your memory of the experience that you had because it was so vivid? Because I would say that you had a bad trip. So
I would also say I had a bad trip.
You had a bad trip, and then the lasting effects of that were on your memory. It was like, wow, it was so intense, and then those lasting effects lingered with you. Okay, and eventually they will dissipate until normally what they'll tell you is that in order to get these things to dissipate, you find other things to focus on to get your attention away. So you develop routines that once you start thinking about these things, you immediately go to something else, and you train your brain to not focus on that negative experience. You then associate the negative experience with a positive, something positive, and you just train your brain to automatically go there whenever the negative memory comes up in your mind. Okay, so you did this with religion. Okay,
Fair.
you basically associated the positive feelings of your God with the negative instance of that bad trip. So now every time you think about the bad trip, you immediately go to God, and it makes you feel better. So there's a physiological response to that. So you don't mire yourself in the negative memory. You immediately associate it with the positive thing, and you immediately go to God. Because you had a physiological effect, I can understand that. And I get it. I get the mechanism behind it. Does this mean your God exists?
No, and I also am not. That's why I'm happy to say my experience, but I also acknowledge that's not very convincing evidence for other people.
I can ask a question. You brought it up, and you said you had a divine experience. So I'm 100% certain that you probably experienced what you just said that you experienced. That is real, because I've had things happen to me that were pretty incredible. My question would be is, how did you link that to being anywhere divine as an intervention?
I've done a lot of acid before. I know that there are altered states. It was like no experience I've ever had, and in one instant, there's a few things things that went on. In one instance, I knew that there were other presences that weren't me in the room, and then in one moment, I knew that there. So that this is why I'm not going to sound very. I'm going to sound crazy, so please excuse me.
No, you're not. Hold on.
No,
you're not going to
trust me, dude.
sound
I've
crazy
done enough
because,
drugs.
as I said, I've had my own experiences. This is not sounding crazy.
I just don't want this to taint what I'm saying.
No,
my
it's
logical
not.
arguments.
At least not.
Okay.
It's not with me. I can guarantee you that. So the thing is, though, that you go to explanations that are probably the wrong ones and then eliminating them. What I'm curious about is, how did you end up with the thought that it might be divine? What was the evidence for that?
Well, I saw a giant glowing image of a man with a crown, and I wasn't thinking Jesus at the time. I just knew that was God in my head. And then it disappeared, and I saw Satan, and that's when Satan started to sing about my life to me in a very real way. It wasn't like a bunch of random words or anything. It was a coherent song. And
at the time you had it, were you into reading the Bible, or did you have any interests about religion as a whole, or your particular religion?
Nope. And my family is not religious.
You had no concept of God or Satan before this?
I'm not saying I had no concept of them as beings, but my family is not religious, no.
Well, there you go.
No, my question was, were you interested in the whole thing at that time? Okay.
No, I was interested in drugs.
See, that's the wild. That's the wild thing. That's the wild thing when it comes to these things. So when you have an experience, when you go through experiences like this, okay, especially when you're hallucinating, you never know how it's going to suss out. You never know how a trip is going to run, and everything that is within your imagination is going to basically what we jokingly refer to as like the download period, like the hour before the shit kicks in. Mm-hmm. Everything that you're like aware of, like you're consciously aware of or even subconsciously aware of, that will inform your trip. Okay, it's all pretty much the data that's all pretty much at the surface, and so you will incorporate that into your trip. If there was a discussion going on or a recent thing that you thought about in that respect, or if you're in the middle of taking a bunch of drugs and you're kind of like, man, this is so like not godly or something like that, or if you have the fleeting thought is like, this is so bad or whatever, or if whatever it is that comes along there, it can inform that trip. So if you had some beforehand, knowledge or even a thought about these things, and then you incorporated that information into your hallucination, and then that's the experience you had. Mm-hmm. So
to summarize, why can't your experience just be explained by the drugs in your brain? Why do you need to invoke God to explain that? Seems like it's perfectly explained by just the brain doing brain chemical stuff.
That's simplifying the question that I had before. Why go to the divine? That's perfect.
Yeah, so that's me looking back at it, and afterwards, after that trip, I didn't become a Christian. After that trip, I was just like, wow, that was a pretty interesting experience. It wasn't until later when all of this stuff started kicking in with what I also believe is demonic oppression, where I'm being followed and I can hear, torment, like it's actual words. It's a being tormenting me day and night, and it's not me. And I'm also not saying that's the evidence. That's why I want to not put too much emphasis. This is my personal story. It backs up what I believe through, I guess, scientific reasons. But I believe there's a lot of other stuff that's a lot more important than the subjective. But I do think the subjective does play a huge role in how we interpret the evidence that we get. Is that fair?
Which is why we want to have it independently verified, and that makes it good evidence.
Exactly.
And
So one of my
what I don't want to do here, is because this could also be something that at the moment at least is keeping you sane. So I don't want to take anything away from that and telling you that it's not true. So maybe we should
you can
move
say
on
it's not
to,
true. It's fine. I'm not going to be
okay, but
struck.
yeah. Well, you don't know what happens to people. So if you're convinced that you see demons, and the moment that protection falls away, I don't know what you're going to do. So that's why I don't want to attack this.
Okay, I'm just saying you're fine.
can-
I'm recovered if that works.
Okay.
I'm not. I don't feel attacked. I don't. But anyway,
okay.
One of the bullet points that I also I don't know if we fully went into this, but what kind of we did kind of. You said predictions or TJump. I think you said predictions and some other
things that can
things.
differentiate imagination from reality, and the thing that does that most effectively is novel testable predictions. So if you can use your hypothesis, say, if my hypothesis is true, here's something we would expect to see in the future, then you do an experiment, you see it, that's evidence.
Okay. All right, that's fair. I also had I think you defined it at the start of this whole thing. If you'd like to define it as well, not for me, but for whoever's listening, your definition for God is a mind,
non-physical mind who created the universe.
Okay, and has power over it, right?
Either way, it doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that what I read from Google, which is what a lot of people will probably go with as well, which fits with what TJump is saying here, is a superhuman being or spirit worshipped as having power over nature or human fortunes, such as a deity. That's part of it as well.
I have a completely different approach. I don't have a definition for God. When I'm talking to someone who is a believer, the one thing that I need to address is their definition of God. So no matter what my definition is, if you want to convince me that the God you believe in exists, I'll have to go with your definition of God. Mine is completely irrelevant.
Okay. Now I have a separate question as well that ties in, but
so we should wrap things up fairly soon. So maybe this will be the last point for you. Yeah, go ahead. But go ahead with this. Yeah.
It's a semantics issue. I won't deny it, but my standpoint is that it is completely irrational to say for a fact I'm an atheist, or even, to be fair, I'm a theist without making it a faith issue, because I think we can all say for a fact that I am not completely certain if there is or isn't a God, but I am convinced this way because of the evidence. I think
I agree with half of that. So the half that I agree with is when someone says they're a theist, then yes, that is a faith position, because theism is the belief in one or more deities, one or more gods or goddesses, or goddesses. It's so definitely there's a faith component to that. Atheism is the absence of belief in any deity, so there isn't that faith component with atheists. Some atheists may have some beliefs, that including a belief that there are no deities. In that case, you could argue that would be a faith component. But I think what you'll find is most atheists who do that will often have arguments to back that position up. Just like theists will have some kind of argument to back up their positions. So I'm the type of atheist that just simply doesn't believe, and so it is not a faith position for me.
All right.
I'm a little bit different. I'm an epistemologist, and that is someone who rejects faith entirely as the most dishonest position to hold, and the worst thing to use to get to a truth.
Okay. want to thank you guys. I'm gonna still listen to you guys. You can finish. I'm just gonna exit to give
Aura,
other people a
just
time.
please hang on for a second. It sounds like TJump wants to
Yeah,
respond to you.
it sounded like your argument was essentially if you don't have 100% certainty, then that little percent you're missing is called faith. And I don't think that's the case. I think faith is when you have a belief disproportionate to the evidence. If you have a lot of evidence, it's not faith. So even though I believe the world is round, and I think that's knowledge, I'm not 100% certain, but I don't have faith the world is round. I have lots of evidence. So I have lots of evidence that God is imaginary, and so it's not faith that God is imaginary. But if you don't have a whole lot of evidence that God is real, then it's faith that you believe in God.
Okay.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna exit quietly.
Oh,
if that's
thank you,
okay.
Aura, for joining us. Really appreciate having this conversation with you. It was very nice, and it was interesting delving into the other stuff a little bit. The what is it? The
LSD?
The LSD part.
Yes. Thank you guys.
Cube, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. What would you like to present to us with regard to whether a god or goddess exists and convincing us of this? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I just had a question on the topic.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so why should I convince you that God exists?
Because it's true.
Because that's the topic of the room.
Because you think it's true.
Who said I think it's true?
You are really
I
loud.
didn't say that.
Like it's really your mic is like screeching. Could you turn your volume down?
Okay, so
Well, I mean, you should convince us if you think it's true. If you think it's true.
I don't.
Oh, Mike.
So, all right, Cube. There are sounds like you've got some audio issues, but this is the topic of the show. Is the reason why. So people are joining this us to try to convince us, and that's it. It's a voluntary thing. If you don't want to try to convince us, then we should move on to the next guest.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
I don't want to convince you guys.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. It was nice chatting with you. Our next guest is Zero G. I just have to find them here in the audience. Discord has moved things around on me here. There's Zero G. Move him right up to the top. Zero G, thank you very much for joining us. The topic, as I'm sure you know, is to convince any of us that a god or a goddess exists. Welcome.
Hey, how's my volume?
Good.
Sounds good.
Let me change my settings because Discord's playing through my speakers.
If you could turn your volume up about 10%, that would be great, but I think it's fine.
All right, how about now, guys?
That sounds great.
All right, sorry, for some reason it's still playing through my speakers. Hold on, I apologize. I wasn't ready for this. So, all right. Can I get a mic check real quick?
Your mic just suddenly got better. You're doing great.
Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was playing through my speakers on my headset, so I was trying to figure out. So I took notes. Like many people here, I'm not sure exactly where I want to start, but I think I want to start with questions, kind of open to everybody. So in my opinion, these are theories that people believe, or they're faith arguments, like the Big Bang. Life evolved over millions of years from single-celled organisms, and also this kind of a sidebar. We can edit DNA today, CRISPR, stuff like that, but we also have big concerns. And the scientific community definitely has big concerns about why we shouldn't toy with DNA because we don't know the downstream effects necessarily and how those things translate over time. So those are kind of questions, but it's. Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to address those two things. The second one there, you're talking about how modifying DNA can affect things downstream. That isn't. Sorry.
That's a third point. I guess it's 3 points. Big Bang, life evolved over time, single-celled, and then edited DNA.
Okay, so the third one then. Sorry, thank you for correcting me. That is in the realm of ethics, and I'm not really sure how that fits into the topic here. The first one you were saying, maybe just quickly review the first point again.
Yeah, basically, I kind of want to start with these questions. So they're theories that people believe in, or they're faith arguments, in my opinion. The Big Bang.
The Big
life
Bang.
of
I
all-
just wanted to clarify.
Zero. I'm sorry, I gotta jump in there.
Go ahead, Warren.
You said there are theories that people believe in that you consider to be faith-based arguments. So,
Yes.
what is your definition of a scientific theory?
And before we go, I just wanted to address the first point quickly. The Big Bang theory has been updated by Hawking and Penrose to conform more with quantum physics. So they talk about there being multiple Big Bangs rather than just one. But go ahead, JL.
Yeah. So, like, what definition of like a scientific theory are you operating off of?
Well, my general understanding is you propose a hypothesis and then you test for it.
Thank you for the sub.
Okay, so a scientific theory is the best explanation for a phenomena. That's essentially that's what it is, completely watered down. It's the best explanation we have for phenomena that is observed.
Right.
So, and when I'm talking about observed, I'm talking about, in the scientific sense, observation means to measure. So, the scientific terminology there. So, when you talk about it, when you're equating theories to faith-based, that's really wrong. That's just straight up wrong. Because faith is defined as faith doesn't have evidence to support. It's belief without evidence. So theory is like the explanation for a thing. And like when you're talking about cosmology, the Big Bang cosmological model is based upon the evidence. And when you're talking about evolution, we know more about evolution. We understand evolution. We know more about it than we know about gravity. So like virtually every single field of physical science out there comes down to the whole body of evidence comes down to evolution. So these are not faith-based.
Warren, you think we have more scientific evidence or understanding of evolution than we do gravity?
Yes.
Oh, that's an interesting take. I'll accept it.
So for one, we don't fully understand the full mechanism behind gravity. We understand the effects of it, and we have a good model that can allow us to make predictions off of gravity. So we understand some of it, but we don't fully understand the entire mechanism behind gravity. However, evolution in and of itself, just the process of evolution, we know more about that than we do about gravity. We've observed it in the lab, we've observed it in nature, we have induced it in other species, we've induced it in ourselves. We understand these things. It's irrefutable. It's like,
there's micro and macro here, right? Because obviously micro we understand, but do we really understand macro? Like we came from single cell.
We do. We do. Micro and macro. Micro and macro. So micro evolution is just talking about evolution within 3 generations. Macro evolution is talking about evolution beyond 3 generations, both of which we have observed. Micro just leads to macro. That's it.
In the lab and in nature.
In lab and in nature.
Yeah.
So that we have to make sure that we're utilizing these terms, because I'm gonna be honest. I'm just gonna be straightforward here. A lot of creationists or a lot of anti-evolutionists or people who want to question evolution, there's 2 mistakes they're making. One, the biggest mistake is they use a lot of scientific terminology that they don't fully understand what the definitions of those terms are. And so they use them incorrectly. And 2, they make the assumption that evolution and God are mutually exclusive, which they are not.
And that's what I was going to say. So God and scientism are often played off of one another as if they're mutually exclusive. So,
which they're not. Just because we've demonstrated, we know that evolution is true. Okay, we've observed it, we've induced it. We can control it. We understand everything about evolution. Just because that doesn't disprove God. Okay, it just disproves the creation narrative of Genesis. But even if we disprove the Bible, that still doesn't disprove God. It could just mean God exists, but we screwed up the Bible. So these things are not mutually exclusive concepts. And if you're going to use scientific terminology, you have to make sure that you're using them correctly. So that's my only point there, is like we got to make sure that we're using the correct term, the correct definition of scientific theory. Theory is not like I have a theory, that's essentially a hypothesis. So you got to say we're using theory correctly, we're using micro and macro evolution correctly, we're using these terms correctly. What exactly is speciation? Stuff like that. So just making sure we're on the same page.
Right, and I respect that, and I'm going to back away from that argument because, again, it's not my field of research, it's not my field of study, so I can't argue, and so I'm just going to take you at your word and let the audience decide. I'm curious what you think of this quote. I want to try to summarize it, but I don't know if I can. So this argument, in the 17th and 18th centuries, the philosophy of empiricism, the belief all knowledge is discovered through our physical senses, began to take hold in the hard sciences, and excluded God from any discussion regarding the physical world. This is a vital stage in our history that led us to divorce between science and religion. It was the very belief that God inspired scientific discovery because people believed the universe was created through intelligence. This means that there was logic and order to the world that made scientific discovery possible in the first place. And sadly, over time, a rift formed between these two. And so I think that kind of goes to what you were saying, that these are not mutually exclusive, but that we do have kind of a dogma that's developed on both sides of it. And they seem to be in contention with one another when they don't necessarily have to be. And I feel like in a lot of these arguments so far with atheists in general and against religious people and vice versa, that we do get very dogmatic and become mutually exclusive. So that's kind of what I've seen in these arguments so far. And so I kind of want to circle back to where I made my earlier points when I was writing down. So the hardest part for me in finding my faith was humbling myself. I went on the path of prove me wrong for about 15 years. They got me nowhere. Basically, I challenged everybody. I was baptized and raised Catholic, but I challenged everybody for about 15 years when I lost my belief in religion or faith or God. And I always constantly used it as like a weapon or a bludgeon. I was constantly attacking people like, prove me, kind of like we're doing here. And until I humbled myself and set aside my ego and my radical rationalism that I needed proof, I never really actually found my faith in God and the tenets of most religions shared general tenets of crafting oneself. Thanks, Jump. I appreciate you. So I see religion. I see the faith. I see the relationship with God as a relationship between like a father and son. If my son comes to me in an arrogant manner, I'm going to be less prone to entertaining it. And if he humbles himself and asks for my advice, I'm much more likely to guide him. And if I kind of said this in the chat a little bit ago. Let me find it if you don't mind.
Is this just preaching? Like, you haven't presented any evidence. Science isn't faith. All of the science is based on evidence. That's why we don't believe in a God.
Okay, Jump. And I respect
that.
I
had a question as well, because you said if I was a father, I would such and such. If I was a father, I would my child know that I exist.
I am a father, and if my
also.
kids came to me in an arrogant fashion, that's the best time to give them some guidance and help them get back on the right path in the way I see it. But I agree with TJump here. We do need to get to how to convince us that a deity exists.
Okay. Then I'll do that and I'll sign off. My point is, as I said, I circled back. As I went through the same processes you're going through of challenging religion and faith, there's not a damn thing anybody could say to me that would have convinced me otherwise, until I actually went and looked for it myself and humbled myself and set aside my ego and my radical rationalism. That's really all I have to say. I'm not going to be able to convince atheists. I already know this.
Zero, if I can ask a question real quick. You said
Yes,
that at a point you lost your faith and then you refound it.
Yes.
Okay. So if you already had these beliefs and then you drop them, you still had knowledge and you still previously had, then something convinced you otherwise. That means that you were convinced by something that you experienced or what you consider to be evidence convinced you that what you once believed was correct, and then you reversed your position again. So my question is, how did you determine that wasn't confirmation bias?
It's very difficult growing up in the societies that grew up in the world to be completely divorced from these ideas and theories in the first place. So it's kind of hard. I mean, I understand what you're asking, but there's no real, unless I don't think there's a society on the planet that people don't have faith in something metaphysical that they can't prove.
Well, to be clear, there are societies where they don't have a belief in any deities, such as the Preshow people. So I can go that far at least.
Yes, you can, but we're again working with the minority. And what he asked
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It makes the point.
I get what you're saying, but what Warren actually asked was, how did I come from one position, move to another, and then back? I grew up in I grew up in a society where I couldn't be divorced from these ideas because they exist. That's what a lot of our societies were built on, is these faiths. And
that's what I was pointing out, Zero. I was pointing out because of that fact. How did you determine that what convinced you the second time that would convince you to become a theist again? How did you know? How did you determine that wasn't confirmation bias?
I'm not religious. I look for the moral teachings. So that aside, I circled back to it because of the path that I was walking. This nihilistic, lack of grounding in any moral or ethical code led me back to a faith. God, I call it intervention, divine intervention. I call it divine influence in my life, guiding me back on the path. And once I accepted the teachings, it's just like if I go to a professor and I don't listen to anything he fucking says, and I just challenge him constantly, but don't actually listen, he's never going to be able to convince me of anything, because I've chosen to not listen or to follow his teachings. And so for me, when I decided to actually open myself, humble myself, set my ego aside, I was able to find a peace in my life that I didn't have otherwise, when I was constantly looking and challenging and fighting against it. Like,
Zero, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
can I ask you a question? Because I've heard so many buzzwords that I've heard from Christian apologist websites.
I've heard a lot of buzzwords from you guys too.
That are completely incorrect. So I don't want to mislabel or misrepresent you. What I would be interested in, when you say I humbled myself, what does that actually mean? What did you do?
I tried to do my best to explain how I was not humble before, and I was arrogant and bombastic and arguably blaspheming.
That doesn't clarify the thing at all.
Okay.
If I ask you, what did you do to humble yourself?
He stopped at Peter.
Explaining that you weren't humble before.
Peter, he stopped asking questions.
No, I stopped attacking. I was on an attack mode. I was in an attack mode to try to get the answers that I was looking for, instead of humbling myself and asking.
Okay, so you had a problem.
What do you mean by what do you mean in an attack mode?
The radical atheist attack mode that is, present in atheism, where you have to always attack from a rational sense of like, I need facts, I need to hear.
One second,
that's completely incorrect. That is just mindless babble.
Okay,
Zero G. I have another word for it.
Zero G. What you're doing now is you're taking a whole demographic of people who don't believe in deities, and you're saying that we all attack people all the time. There are many atheists who don't engage in debate, who just live their lives, and that's that. So I definitely have to push back against that misconception.
Can I make 3 points?
Yeah, go ahead, Jefferson.
So it's not uncommon to hear Christians or any people of beliefs, especially the Abrahamic gods, talk about humbling themselves. But the issue about that being presented to skeptics is, one, if you say, well, what that sounds like, the implicit subscription for us is that we need to humble ourselves, which sounds like that our position, whatever our positions are as atheists, is one that is biased in some way by ego. Two, the other problem that I have with what you went on to say was that, well, if I think I just lost my train of thought.
No, I get what you're saying.
The biggest one being is that you're already starting from a touchy spot by saying, in my own subjective experience, I was a lot more prideful and a lot more arrogant as a believer than I was when I was an atheist. I can honestly give the exact same testimony for my deconversion that you're giving to your reconversion back to the faith. Exactly. I humbled myself, and I stopped attacking skepticism, and I stopped attacking people who weren't Christians, and started listening to claims from on all sides, and eventually found myself more convinced that a God didn't exist. And then on top of that, this idea of kind of radical rationality, if you're going to, you need to be careful about that, because there's an entire camp of Christians out there that are radical rationalists that are yet barking at skeptics. Guys like Darth Dawkins, J. Robin, these types of people that believe that you can rationalize your way to a belief in God. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I'll be
I appreciate that, and I didn't mean for it to seem like an attack. Like I'm not attacking your ego or.
I don't think that you're attacking. Actually, I wanted to clarify that as well. I just think that the language that you're using in those points is inaccurate when you're trying to address. If anything, the language I think could be misunderstood as an attack against another position or another side, not against me personally. I don't take that personally. I'm just saying that language is loaded with enough ambiguities that it really doesn't get your point across as well as you think it might.
No,
that's why I asked you to clarify what you meant by humbling yourself. Because I'm still not understanding what that means. No, nor did I.
Okay. Then I'll just summarize. The biggest reason for me wanting to jump in is simply that I used to be in this position. I'm no longer there, but I also know that nobody could convince me when I was in this position that you folks are in to come to faith. I had to look for it for myself.
That's wrong because
there's never going to be any evidence that's sufficient for you ever.
But you have been convinced. Mm-hmm.
I know, but you're never going to get it.
Why? Well, TJump for charitability. Why wouldn't we ever get it 0?
Because you're asking for God to physically manifest itself when almost every faith.
No, hang on.
Jesus Christ.
Peter, let him finish.
1 versus 6, I can't fucking do this shit.
Yeah, Peter,
you're doing this to everybody.
0, finish your statement.
Thank you, Warren. My point is, you're asking for physical manifestation of God, and almost every religion that I'm aware of puts God in a metaphysical realm where you can't. And I may be getting the terminology wrong, but he is not in the physical realm. Some religions think he is physical. He is Gaia. He is the trees, etc. So,
can I ask why you are determining what I am asking when I haven't said anything about what I am asking?
Yeah, I would agree with Peter here. So it seems
I'm asking you for your evidence.
No matter
it seems like whether or not it would convince me, I'm asking you for your evidence, and your answer is you're never going to get it because
I answered
you said this, which I didn't say. Hold on, you said this. What I didn't say. I'm asking you for your evidence.
I don't think unless I grabbed God by the hand and brought him in front of you that it would ever be sufficient for you. What I'm saying is that when I humbled myself,
I'm sorry you're that dishonest, but we just asked for what convinced you. And if you don't want to tell us what convinced you, then maybe something didn't convince you. I don't know. I have no clue.
I want to clarify one thing real quick. One sec. I want to clarify something really quick. So your belief of what will convince us is irrelevant. Your psychological biases don't matter. Evidence is evidence regardless of whether or not people accept it. So you saying that we won't be convinced is just you giving a cop-out that you don't have any evidence. You saying that your God doesn't exist in the physical realm and can't be tested is just you admitting you have no evidence. And I don't care if it's physical. You can give me whatever kind of evidence you want. I just need some evidence to indicate it's not just something in your imagination. If you can't provide that, you have no evidence. So this is something theists do a lot. They try and label the atheist as being biased. Like, no, you just need to present evidence. Like, it doesn't matter if we accept it or not. If you have evidence, it's evidence regardless of whether or not we accept it. Stop making excuses.
Well, all I know is there are millions of people that when they humble themselves before God, their life gets better. And then I know a bunch of atheists who are nihilistic and don't give a shit.
Explain what humbling is. You still haven't explained what humbling is.
Peter, this whole humbling thing is getting lost in the weeds. The important thing is what Zero just said right here: humbling themselves before God. That statement alone, right there, already assumes that God exists for you to humble yourself before.
Exactly.
I appreciate you trying to be charitable, Warren. I really do. I thank you.
Not a problem. So, but the problem with that, Zero, is if you already assume that God exists for you to be able to humble yourself before him, then how do you determine that the conclusion you're coming to is not confirmation bias? That's the problem, because then you have to justify why I'm holding something, why I'm holding onto a belief when it could be confirmation bias. And then you have to ask, why would a God in its infinite wisdom and power require human beings to justify a belief for a bad reason? Confirmation bias is bad because it doesn't get us to the truth. Why would the God in its infinite knowledge and wisdom, recognizing how bad confirmation bias is because it can lead you to false conclusions, why would it require confirmation bias in order to believe in it? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I want to build on that if you don't mind, Warren, with
Go
you
for it.
specifically. So if a God exists and he presented himself and he guided you directly, is that necessarily a better version of the world? I mean, do you want to live in a world where the God is all knowing, all controlling, all present in your life, and the only possibility is good?
Why do you keep asking what we want? We don't care about emotional biases.
Jump, I don't want to talk to you.
That's because you're an idiot. So stop talking about emotional biases. I don't care what people want. Give me evidence.
I know you're autistic, and I don't want to talk to you.
Zero.
We can get this guy off the stage. This is bullshit.
I would only.
You're a
be
self-admitted
interested-
autist. Come on. Get out
Yes,
of
I am autistic. That's not a problem.
Let's
Kick him
not
out.
include some
Yeah,
ableism
that's
here. Come on, buddy.
we can't
Let's chill.
go.
I think by now, Zero, we're done talking to you.
I've just moved Zero G out of the audience because of that ridiculous slur.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable here. So
little too heated.
we're going to move on to our next guest here. Unless anybody just wanted to summarize something quickly before we did that.
Well, I got to be honest. I think it's a more
Jail's
egregious.
Just got a confirmation bias against confirmation bias.
Well,
and that's circular.
So I think it's more egregious that he never mentioned any actual factual statements, and the only thing he said is, "What do you feel? This is how I feel. What do you feel?" And that's it. That was the only things he brought up. He brought up no logical evidence whatsoever, and this is the problem with those kinds of religious arguments, is that there's nothing there. Like just saying you feel or you have a bias, and well, I just lost my bias and that's how I accepted the true faith. That's not evidence. Literally none of that is evidence. No. None of that is actually rational or logical at all. It's just gibberish.
I kind of wanted to point out that his, in asking JL like what he wants or what we want, let's say that we were charitable with him and we followed that particular line of questioning. If I say, yeah, actually I do. I want to know that God's there. I want to believe in that, but I've humbled myself and I still don't get it, right? Do you want me to then acknowledge belief in something? Do you want me to lie? Right? Like you could want that type of deity as much as you want, but not be convinced it's there. No amount of humbling is going to get you there, and then you have to turn to the believer and say, okay, what's my next step? Because let's say that I'm convinced that your deity is real and that I need to be convinced that he's real and confess that with my mouth in order to be saved, or I'm going to the pokey hot torture place. Well, they've got nothing. If I'm not convinced, they have nothing. They just come back and say, you're not humbling yourself enough, or fake it till you make it, or some other nonsense like that.
Here's the thing. He said, at some point, I started humbling myself, and I decided to not be arrogant anymore. Then he comes into this chat, is not humble at all, and is arrogant, and that is supposed to convince us that he made the right choice. That is going to put us off even more than we are already.
Peter, are you saying?
If you want to convince us, let's have a decent and cordial conversation without having your ego getting in the way and thinking that you are better now you found a God, because you're not. You're the same person.
I got to stop you there. Like, it did sound like it started off cordial. I think he was making the effort.
It did.
I'm okay if people have the attitude that they are better than us, as long as they're able to convince us. That's the important thing. Whether they're arrogant is irrelevant in this topic, I think. But when he went to resorting to using the word autist as a pejorative, as a derogatory thing, that was it. He's out. This kind of stuff is not acceptable.
Maybe it's just me. I don't want to be arrogant when I have these conversations with believers, and I would really like to, because we had a guest just before this we could have a cordial conversation with, even when we disagreed, and I just DM'd him because I want to continue that conversation.
We had quite a
This
few
type
guests
of
like this.
attitude.
Damn, I really wanted to know
that
why his God requires the absolute worst in human reasoning in order to believe that it exists. That's
Exactly.
I want to know.
Go next speaker. Next speaker.
Yeah,
we're gonna go to our next. Sorry, go with Jefferson. Last word, and then we're gonna go to our next presenter.
Yeah, I just got to get going. But it's been nice being here. Thanks for having me on, guys, and have fun.
Thank you,
Jeff.
Jefferson.
Take care, Jefferson.
And
Take
hello
care,
to
everybody.
Jack, and hello to Jack Burton and IX, by the way. You guys joined in along the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring in our next in the queue, who is RNG Base. Hello, RNG Base. Welcome. And the topic, of course, as I'm sure you know, is to try to convince us that a god or a goddess exists. What say you, sir?
I say it's fine. Hey, how are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
All right, I have a couple points to make, I think, before we start.
Okay, make them quick.
Yeah, the points where you said a god or a goddess exist. I do not believe God has a gender, first of all. It's not something.
And we'll use the word deity. That's fine.
God is fine also, but it doesn't refer to a male god or a female god.
Okay, that's fine.
Next.
Yeah. Second point, I think Peter G. Tucker made while he was speaking to the second guy, I believe, he said, you believe in a god where if you go to the Arabic world or the Middle Eastern world, these guys would not believe in the same god as you do, right? Did you make that claim, Peter? Or?
Yes, and I can elaborate on that because I host a show about the Quran, and I've read the Bible myself twice, cover to cover. So those two books are not the same. They make contradicting claims. So to me, and that is completely personal. If the God of the Quran is real, then he's not the God of the Bible. If the God of the Bible is real, then he's not the God of the Quran. So that is what I meant when I said two different gods. I do know that all three main religions basically worship the same God.
Okay.
But to me, there's a big distinction.
It's a simple question. What do the Bibles say about the Father, as in the Arabic text? Since you study and have this show and stuff in the Quran, what does the actual Christians that live there are? The Arabs are either Arabs is not a religion. Arabs is an ethnic race where they can be Muslim, they can be atheist, they can be Christians. What do Arab Christians? I know. Yeah, what do Arab Christians call the Father in that case? Until
they call him Allah because that's the word in Arabic for God.
Have you heard of Tafsir Rasag? This is Saida Gawan. He's a Jewish scholar from the 8th century. He wrote the word Allah instead of Yahweh also, and his actual tafsir.
So, but
just to clarify, I think when Peter said,
let's not get stuck on the language because I think you misunderstood part of what I meant when I said that.
I'll get to this. I'll get to it.
When I was referring to the Arab countries, those are predominantly Muslim countries, and that is the point that I was bringing forth. There's nothing to say about Christians living there because I know there are Christians living there. One of them is my best friend.
Okay, wait. When you mean
he came
Muslim
from Syria,
countries,
so
what Muslim countries do you mean?
Wait, the point he made was that there are different religions. That the God they believe in is not identical. They have different properties. That's the only point he made. He didn't mean literally Allah. He meant in Christianity, there's a Trinity. There's God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. In Islam, there is not the Trinity. Jesus isn't even a God. He's just a prophet. So they're different religions. That was the only point he made. Is there some substantive claim here coming up?
Yes, sure.
I don't think we should linger on this. This is completely unimportant.
Yeah, I'm not. But I think that was a false accusation by saying they don't worship the same God.
It was a generalization that there are differences in the religion.
I just elaborated on that. TJump did the same thing by saying the Christians believe in a Trinity.
I'll move on.
So it is a different God.
I will say, I'll say this. I do think that it's fair to regard Allah and the Christian God Yahweh as two separate entities.
Why would you say that?
Oh, don't no. Now let's go to a different point, please. Oh.
Yeah, okay, we'll move on because they're from different religions, the way I see it. But okay.
Why would you? Okay. TJump made the claim also, or have said, according to predictions. Do you consider what? Actually, let me rephrase. What do you guys say about prophecies?
Yeah, prophecies would be great evidence if they were real.
Oh, alhamdulillah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And I want to add on to that. The prophecy has to be precise.
Yes, I agree.
Not
100%.
something we find in the Bible or the Quran, because they could be fulfilled in many different ways because they're not specific enough.
Okay, so let me start with an example from the Bible, yeah,
sure.
And then we can move up to the Quran.
RNG. You can pretty much assume that everybody on here is really, really familiar with prophecies in the Bible and all that. You don't have to give an example of one, but here, let me just pose something to you real fast.
Yeah.
If I make a prophecy, okay, if I make a prophecy now, and then the amount of time that takes place in between, for example, if I prophesize that something is going to happen tomorrow, and then it happens, and I made that prophecy based upon my knowledge or whatever, it doesn't matter, and then it happens, is that prophetic? Or if I make a prophecy and it takes place 100 years later, is that prophetic? And then if I make a prophecy and then the group of people that believe that prophecy work towards making it happen, and then it happens, is that prophecy?
Yes, let me see. Let me tell you, a prophecy I would consider something to be more of an uncommon thing, like such as, let's say, maybe in like 5 years' time, I don't know, the moon would no longer exist. Yeah, something unusual. Yeah.
Yes. So, did you want to give us an example from the Bible and the Quran? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I also want to say it doesn't have to be unusual. The prophecy has to be specific and has to be
I agree.
worded
100%.
in a way that it can only point to one particular case.
Can we let him make the argument? Like, stop preempting his argument. Let him make the argument first. Go ahead. Give us the prophecy.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. So, let me open up, give you the chat or the room, the chapter number, so you can. You can open up with me and just read with me, yeah?
Sure.
What about chapter 30, verse 3? Yeah.
Of what book?
Can you read it for me, TJump?
What book?
Quran, Surah 30 in chapter 4. Verse 4, sorry.
Quran 34?
34, yeah.
All right, what's the prophecy there?
Yeah.
Why don't you just read it out? We'll take you.
Within 3 to 9 years, to Allah belongs the commands before and after. That doesn't make any sense. And that day, the believers will rejoice.
3, 4. Yeah, 3 and 4. In a nearby land, yet following their defeat, they will triumph. You can. Okay, I'll read it for you. هذا بالله الرجيم ألف لام ميم غلبت الروم في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبتهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد ويومئذ يفرح المؤمنون. So the verse says the Romans have been defeated. It starts with this at verse 2. Verse 3 says in a nearby land, yet following their defeat they will triumph. Yeah, within 3 to 9 years. Is this a prophecy precise enough for you, Peter the Second?
No.
No, and I can tell you why. Because if your God existed, he would know exactly in which country, and he would know
exactly at
what time.
Yeah. Do you know what
in a nearby country leaves it open to multiple events.
That
is why this is not a prophecy.
Yeah. Do you know what's the word nearby in Arabic means? It means adna. The word adna can translate to a nearby land or the lowest of land. Lowest of land. What is the lowest of land, as you know of?
It's where I come from. the
Well,
Netherlands.
you realize, RNG, that doesn't work because you just said that there's two possibilities there, which means it's open to interpretation, which means it opens the field. It opens the field of interpretation even wider.
So bigger problem. Bigger problem here. So
let him go with this because I live in the Netherlands, which literally in my country translate to the lowest land, and our land is below sea level.
I'm talking about I'm talking sea level. How many meters are you below sea levels now?
We're
wait. So are you gonna? The point here is that nowhere does it say in the Quran the lowest point is sea level. That's not a thing.
TJump, let him go. Let him go for a minute.
Can I? Yeah. Okay.
So what happened in my country? What happened in my country?
Why do you say your country? First of all, why do you say your country? Is your country the lowest?
Because we're the lowest country on the planet.
No, you're not. Jericho is.
Well, what?
Jericho is. Jericho, the town Jericho near the Dead Sea, Israel, Jerusalem, Palestine right now. Do you know of? 430 meters below sea level.
Okay.
Yeah, just open up Wikipedia and look it up.
I get to finally say this word, Djibouti. That's the lowest country on Earth.
What's the sea level there?
Well, again, the country of Djibouti is negative
Why?
153 meters.
153. I'm telling you, Dead Sea is 424 meters.
So again, none of this matters.
Hold on. I need to clarify a little bit because Jerusalem nor the Dead Sea is a country.
What Jericho is? Isn't it?
Nor is Jericho.
I don't care.
Jericho is not
I
a country.
don't care. Like, none of this is evidence. It does not say the lowest sea level country. It says a word which you can interpret in the lowest sea level way. It doesn't actually say the lowest sea level point. They didn't even know what the lowest sea level was. They didn't know what sea level was. They couldn't measure it. Doesn't say that anywhere in the Quran. That's not a prediction. Also, it said from 3 to 9 years. That's a 6-year period where wars were completely ubiquitous. They happened every single year. So the fact that they were going to win one is not a prediction at all. It's extremely common. And a 6-year time period is not precise. Nothing about that is a precise prediction. Nothing.
Okay, TJump. Do you know how the war went? The Roman and the Byzantine Empire. Do you know how the war went? First of all,
there are many of them. What does that have to do? This is not a prediction.
I'm just asking you a simple question.
Which is not a prediction. Make an argument. Stop asking questions. Make an argument.
I am.
Okay, what's your argument?
What was the size of the army of the Byzantine Empire?
I don't know, and I don't care. What's the argument?
Why?
What is the argument? Stop asking questions. Make an argument.
Why are you talking to me?
Why are you asking questions? Make an argument.
I am making an argument.
Okay, what's your argument? Stop asking questions. Make the argument.
Okay, my argument is this is a clear prophecy from the Quran. Shows you that the Romans will triumph again after their loss, their defeat, in the lowest land possible on earth, within 3 to 9 years,
That's a 6-year period, so it's not precise. Lowest land can be interpreted in many ways. It doesn't say Romans. All of that's ambiguous. None of that's a prediction. Next.
Yeah. Okay.
Nothing about it is clear.
Well, let me give you a good prediction. Let me give you one from. One second. Let me give you a good prediction. A good prediction is from the Bhagavad Gita, where it said the age of the earth is 4.3 billion years old. That's a damn good prediction. It's precise, gives an exact number, and it's pretty much accurate.
Is it exact?
No, it's very, very close. So it's closer than yours.
Okay.
Yours says wait. Stop.
No. Wait.
Let me finish.
Make a point.
Mute.
Okay.
Let me finish. So that is like the closest prediction of the age of the earth anyone has ever made. That's extremely precise. Yours is gibberish. 3 to 9 years. That's a 6-year period in a place where wars are ubiquitous. That's not
6-year
precise.
Period. You flip over 6-year period, but when he makes a prediction about 4.3, well, it's 4.6 by 200 million years. That's
again. So percentage-wise, that's extremely accurate. Yours is extremely garbage. So wars, which happen all the time, which is very, very easy to predict, you're going to win or lose a war in a 10-year period. That's easy. Predicting the age of the earth is extremely hard. So being within that age, that like level of accuracy is extremely good. That's an extremely good prediction. Saying that like somebody's going to have a war in 3 to 9 years is nothing. That happens all the time. It's like predicting this. Stop interrupting.
If it's the Roman Empire, especially if it's the Roman Empire, which was a conquesting. Especially if it's the Roman Empire, which was a conquesting republic, which was typically at war at pretty much all the varying areas of its front as it expanded.
So
not a prediction.
To clarify,
Wait,
let me finish. Let me finish. You guys both interrupted. Let me finish. Holy shit! Let me finish. So, if you make a prediction of something that happens all the time, that is a bad prediction. Like if I predict the sun's going to rise tomorrow, predicting war in the Middle East is like predicting the sun's going to rise tomorrow. Nothing special. If you predict the age of the Earth, which is extremely difficult to predict and has a 14 billion year time span, the fact that you get that close is extremely impressive. The Hindus make a good prediction. Yours is garbage.
Okay. Since you said mine is garbage, show me authentication for that prediction, right?
What?
It's only fair, right?
So hold on.
Wait.
No,
Wait, you can't.
What did you ask?
Hold on. No. That's not fair. That's not fair.
Peter, stop. Stop. RNG asked a question. What was the question? RNG asked a question. Stop. Peter, stop. Holy shit. Peter, stop.
Let TJump's dealing. Let the TJump handle this.
RNG, you asked me a question. You said something about confirmation, something.
I said I could go right down now a sentence that predicts something that nobody could have known, and I can attribute it to any book in the world, right? Without authentication. Show me authentication of that specific prophecy you have told about.
Well, it's in the original manuscripts of the Hindu documents. Like that's like, you want me to like literally pull them up? Like if you can Google it yourself. Like there's no debate here.
Link me. You have said you studied this. You have seen this, right? Show me.
Yes, it's just literally a translation of the.
I came here prepared. I can show you manuscripts. I'm here to show you manuscripts. I don't mind.
In Hinduism, yeah, there's no ambiguity here. Like this is not something that needs to be debated. You can literally just look it up in every single document.
Could you find this and post it in chat so can everybody see it?
I'm doing it right now.
How Hinduism is very good and actually the right religion, since that is the case.
Well,
and
no, it's not the right religion.
No, wait.
No, sir. RNG, stop.
Randolph, which chat?
You legit just like
hang up.
Straight you straight up into you just flipped the table right there because you pretty much just went after it. All TJump was bringing up was that one particular group made a better prediction that is more precise than yours did. Okay, that's all he was bringing up. You immediately jumping to the conclusion that Hinduism is the right religion, is the better religion.
Yeah, but wait. Let me say, because he said himself, if I see predictions, I would take this for granted, right?
Evidence. Predictions is evidence, correct?
Yeah, you said that's the evidence. So is that not enough evidence for you to believe in Hinduism?
No, that's most likely just a lucky guess, but it is evidence. It's better than your evidence.
Okay. The thing is, I literally have around 200 prophecies, and I can literally start giving you one by one. No worries.
All right, I'm going to stop this because you've...
Randolph, but this is not fair.
RNG base. You've provided a prophecy that didn't work out. We have limited time because there's quite a few people waiting to get in here. If you want to make one more point, that would be fine. Let's try to keep the time down on this, and you can go back and forth to TJump on this, I think is what you want to do, right?
Can I ask a question before I make another point?
Sure, make it quick,
Yeah, so I'm here talking about pulling scripts instead of telling you subjective feelings of I have seen God in a dream, or I feel that it's a feminine powerless God or some shit. I don't know, man, Yeah, and I'm here pulling up verses, and I'm trying to have a fruitful discussion with you guys. And you're trying to tell me of this stuff, dude. What is this? Can I make my point? And I have been here for like literally 12 minutes. Everybody has been here for like 30 minutes on the stage at least. Can I make a few points, please?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is we want to make sure we're mindful of the time because it sounds like we're getting in depth. You mentioned that you've got over 200 prophecies. We don't have time to go through 200 of them.
I'm not gonna get you 200 on stage.
RNG, why don't you bring your best instead of bringing 200? What do you personally think, is the best and most accurate prophecy you can find in the Quran?
I think they're all pretty accurate. I'll give you one. Okay.
Well, we want the one that's the most accurate. Yeah, the best is a good thing. Give us the best one that you can think of.
Sahih Hadith, Muslim 2955p. The Hadith says, the earth would consume all of Son Adam except his tailbone. From it was he created, and from it he will be recreated on the day of resurrection. Yeah.
Could you say that again slower, please?
I didn't get the first part. Can you say that again?
Okay. It is Sahih Hadith.
Might be a language problem with me.
Yeah, Sahih Hadith means an authentic Hadith from the book Muslim, called Muslim. It is number 2955.
Just read the quote. We don't need to pay. We need to read the quote.
But he's asking me about this part.
I'm also objecting because now you're reading from a Hadith. There are thousands of Hadiths, and those are pretty much irrelevant because those are explanations of people who have read the Quran and are elaborating on it.
I'd still like to hear the prophecy
because the Quran is the book that is inspired by your God. I'd be more interested in
Peter, that doesn't
what
matter.
He had to say instead of what people who interpreted the book their way had to say.
Peter, if it makes prophecies, it works. It doesn't matter which book it is. I don't care. Peter, I don't care.
I'm just saying the Hadith.
Peter, I don't care. It doesn't matter. If he makes successful
on
predictions, it doesn't matter which book it's in. Tell me what the prediction is.
I'm sorry.
It does matter because
it doesn't matter.
Has no bearing on
it. Doesn't
Islam.
matter. It doesn't matter, Peter. If he has predictions, those are good evidence. What is the prediction? Please read it again.
I disagree with that. I will read that. I would disagree with Peter's definition, but yeah, I will read the Hadith. The Hadith says the earth would consume
slowly, please. Slowly.
Yeah, sure. The earth would consume all of the son of Adam except his tailbone. From it he was created, and from it he will be recreated.
Okay, how is that a prediction of anything?
Okay, I would say, what is the first development you see in a non-miscarriage embryo?
So
what is the first symptom?
When it says it consumes the blood of Adam, that's ambiguous. So anything that's ambiguous can't be a prophecy or a prediction. Has to be specific. Has to specifically say something. That is ambiguous because it can be interpreted in many, many different ways. So that isn't a successful prediction. Successful prediction is like the Hindu, which gives you an exact number. It says 4.3 billion. That's prediction. What you said is ambiguous storytelling.
And also, when it comes to miscarriages, you have miscarriages at every stage of a pregnancy. So there's nothing that they all have in common.
Okay. So I said, what if you have a miscarriage, you would like a symptom in the 15 days of the earliest embryo stages, right? I didn't mention having miscarriages I didn't talk about miscarriages. I said, what is the first symptom you would need to have to not have a miscarriage, right? This is what I said.
But it doesn't say that anywhere in the quote. So your quote does not predict anything. You're ambiguating it.
Okay, guys. I don't know. This is literally, this is literally just okay. I'll move on. Okay. Do you guys have familiarities with the Rosetta Stones?
Yep.
Okay. Do you know when the pyramid text was translated?
I know lots of things. Would you have an argument?
Yes.
We're kind of shotgun blasting points here, and I don't think it's fair to the other people in the queue that want to get up here.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much exhausted this. We've gone through a few prophecies, and I've not been convinced by them. It's obvious TJump hasn't been.
Stones too. Come on.
What? Why was it so hard to listen to me? Like literally, you couldn't let me make one point.
Actually, you made a number of points.
Yeah, you made a few points, buddy.
Yeah, so we're gonna move on to the next audience member. Thank you for joining us, RNG Base. The next person joining us is an atheist. His name is God420.
Oh God.
God420, welcome. And
a LARPer.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. What do you have to say?
I was wondering to see if RNG could actually convince me that his God is correct.
You guys can go to the private chat.
Where you'll have to engage with him on that separately. Is that just the reason why you joined us?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll wait until the next Theist comes up if you want.
Okay, so we're going to thank you for joining us, God420. Appreciate your time. We're going to move on to the next guest, who is Zizo. Where is Zizo here? I'm trying to... Darn, this moves things around again. This I'm trying to find Z-I-Z-O here. Z-I-Z-O. I apologize. I cannot find Zizo.
He jumped off the queue. So.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, so we're gonna go with Kyrie. Kyrie, and I don't see Kyrie on here either.
Yeah,
okay.
People are, if you like leave and join the queue, it puts you back, resets you to the bottom.
Oh, I keep a separate queue. We're gonna go with Boomerstein next. I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly. Boomerstein, welcome. As I'm sure you know, our subject here is to try to convince any of us that a god or goddess exists. How are you? Welcome.
Good. I know half of you already.
What's up, Boomer?
So, you know what? I just want to point this out because I feel like you guys didn't catch on with the Muslim guy from before. He was going to point to the Byzantine Sassanids fighting the Arabs, and then he was going to say look how outnumbered they were and how they won and blah blah blah. And then he was just like, yeah, because they bribed all the mercenaries. Okay, sorry, I just had to get that out. Any reason, and this is going to be kind of a weird question for you guys, I think, but why deny deism?
I would reject the existence of any god because all human concepts start off as imaginary until demonstrated otherwise. So until positive evidence is given, it's rational to conclude all conceptions of a god are purely just imaginary. So anything you can think of until evidence is provided is probably just a thing in your imagination. That's why you would reject deism.
Yeah, that's fair. I just wanted a reason. Because I've asked JL a bunch of times and he's never given me an answer. Sorry to throw you under the bus
Randall,
like that.
Randall,
It's
can you
true.
check DM, please?
I've answered that question. Because
You've never answered it to me.
Oh, well, I have answered that question. I don't accept supernatural explanations for things. It's pretty much
Okay,
along the
that's
same
fair.
lines as TJump.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to get a reason. I don't really have to agree with it.
Because potato.
Ah, yes.
Well, why don't
Because
JL
42.
TJump just go on agreeing with each other about everything?
Yep.
Yeah. Because reason.
Okay, you can throw me down now.
Oh, gladly. Let me do it. Hold on. Ugh.
Into the lion pit with you.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to our next guest here, who is, hope I'm saying this right, Abu Akhtab. They'll have to correct me on this if I can find them in the list here. This Discord really needs to work on
He
their...
took off. I
Oh,
got. Are you going off the?
Heroscos would be next. Heroscos, where's Heroscos?
I got it.
Heroscos, H-A-I. There we go. Welcome, Heroscos. Thank you for joining us. As I'm sure you are aware, our topic is to try to convince any of us that a god or a goddess exists. Welcome.
Yeah, I would like to start off by prefacing and asking a question. If it would be too charitable to ask, if I could speak to one person in specific throughout the course of this entire discourse.
Sure.
Okay, so can everybody else sort of mute themselves and under no circumstance speak up? And I regard one person in very specific.
I might speak up if I have to clarify something, or any of us might, but generally we'll let you just focus with one person. Go ahead.
All right, seems good. Is it okay if I pick someone out in specific that I'd like to debate or talk to?
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, so JL Warren.
What's up?
From what I've seen in you, you seem like probably one of the more open to new ideas kind of a person in this chat. So I'd be interested in talking to you in specific. Now, I have studied quite a bit on Christian apologetics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the specific areas in which I find to be the most profound when it comes to proving the existence of God is like the Muslim guy said in the past. He said prophecy. Now, I believe Muslim prophecy, a lot of it's ambiguous. A lot of it's just kind of dumb, and it doesn't make any sense. Now, there are specific prophecies in the Bible which do have set time locked periods in which these things would have to transpire and for them to be considered prophetic. Otherwise, the entire religion would just go to nothing and it would be moot.
Like the destruction of Tyr?
Well, that one didn't have a specific like time in which it was supposed to transpire, so I don't know if I'd say that.
But it never happened, right?
Well, I don't know too specifically on that, but I'd like to
Well,
redirect
that's like the biggest one that always comes to mind when you're talking about biblical prophecy. So the
Yeah, biblical prophecy. I'm not talking about that one though. I want to refer to another one.
Okay, go ahead.
Have you ever heard of the prophecy within the 9th chapter of Daniel called the Daniel 70 weeks prophecy?
Oh, what's the chapter and verse?
Daniel chapter 9, verse 24 through 27.
The 70,
it's a very, very
the
hyper-specific.
The 70 weeks are decreed?
Yeah, it's a very hyper-specific prophecy that goes really into detail of what's supposed to happen. It talks about
the 77s are decreed. The 70 essentially what they assume the total is 70 weeks because they technically it's 77s are decreed for your people in your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness. So what about that? Because it's talking about a certain amount of time in order to basically stop doing what they were doing.
Well, if you look at the Masoretic texts, and this is why I like using the King James Version of the Bible. It was compiled by a bunch of Orthodox Jews and preserved. So presumably they'd have a bias against what this would prove. Now, what exactly it proves is the exact year the Messiah would die on over the course of about 500 or 700 to 500 years.
Yeah, that's a big window.
No, because it says like specifically when it would happen though. So yes, it is a big window, sure, but seemingly there is no reason for this or possible method by which they would use to accomplish the fulfillment of this prophecy, especially because it works against them.
Well, there's two issues there. One is specificity, which is what TJump brought up. TJump and both Peter brought up with the talking with the previous guy.
Yeah.
Is that specificity is really important. And there's also the issue that if this knowledge is known, as was the oral tradition that was passed down until it was written down, if this knowledge is known as part of like what their biblical prophecy is or what their prophecy was before it was written down, because it was just the oral tradition, then how do you account for groups taking strides or basically making concerted efforts to bring this to fruition? Because remember, the longer amount of time between the actual making of the making of the prophecy and the time that it takes place, especially if I give like such a large window in which it could take place, that means I've got a lot amount of time that as long as it occurs within that window, then technically I'm correct. So if I say next year, if I say like next year, I'm going to do an action, and as long as or say I'm going to do an action within a year, and as long as I do that action within 365 days, technically did I prophesize it? But even more so, what I brought up with the other dude is that when there are groups that are making concerted efforts to make it happen. In other words, like directing events to make it come true. Now, if there is a group which there are groups, working in concert to make these things happen, does that make them prophecies?
Well, first of all, I don't think crucifying or rather publicly executing the leader of your religious organization in the most cruel and suffer-inducing manner possibly would be something that you'd work in favor of, nor do I think these people specifically were hyper-focused on this prophecy being fulfilled in this exact moment.
But wouldn't it behoove Christ to act in a behavior that would result in that and allowing him to fulfill that prophecy? Because Christ himself, if he existed, would be aware of the oral traditions of his people. And so he would be aware of what that would be. And so he himself was convicted of the crime of heresy and claiming to be king. And so essentially that's why he was crucified. That's why he was essentially judged and why he was crucified in the end. And the problem is that if he is aware of this and he believes a thing and he walks around telling people that this is what it is, and he knows full well that this is what's going to happen to him for doing this, which essentially he predicted. So if he knows the results of his actions and then it happens, and he constructed those events, or his disciples constructed those events to make that happen, does that make it prophecy?
Well, first of all, I think that, I mean, even going over the Gospels, and I know this, you might think this is circular logic, but at the same time, historians do take into consideration the emotional state and the psychological state of the people writing these Gospels themselves. And what you'll notice inside of them is that they lose all hope. They basically kind of want to die.
Well, that's problematic. Is how can we speak to the because the people who wrote them weren't there. They were written anonymously. We don't know who wrote them, and they weren't first-hand accounts. So that's what's problematic, is we can't speak to the emotional state of the people depicted in the story because the person who wrote them.
This is kind of a red herring, though.
No, but it's not. It's not, because we can't draw a conclusion as to the emotional states of the people within the story based upon the account of a person who wrote it decades later, who was never there and never met them.
Yeah. See, the problem here, though, is this isn't really addressing the prophecy at hand, though, because the prophecy has a very, very specific time lock of when this thing is supposed to happen. It's not like it's saying, well, over the course of 490 years, this in between this kind of time, it could happen. No, it's saying very specifically on the 69th week, this is supposed to happen.
69th,
right?
The 69th week from when? That's where
from the commandment. No, it's not my problem. Let me explain to you. It's from the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem.
And there's no specific time as to when that occurred.
Yes,
that's actually up for debate.
That's presuppositional, actually, because there is.
No, that's up for debate as to when that actually took place.
No. There's a very specific command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem that was given by King Artaxerxes in his 20th year on 444 BC. Right. That's specifically when this decree was given. Now, very specifically in this decree was the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Not only that, but to rebuild the walls, which is a specific component of the prophecy, which isn't fulfilled anywhere else in any other decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. So the claim that there is ambiguity here is completely unfounded, and it's presuppositional.
No, it's not. It's judging what different denominations believe about different things and who and what starting points you have. Because there's some people that reject that God would divine anyway, that God would inspire anything through Xerxes. There are people that reject that. Okay, so there is argumentation as to what point you start from, but it doesn't matter. That still injects ambiguity into this. But here's another issue on this: none of this was written down.
No. I want to address what you just said, because I don't want to move on from that. I disagree with that highly.
You can't disagree with that.
You'd have to make rational claim, though, that God wouldn't work through these people, because there's people like Cyrus who God worked through. He was a conqueror.
But you don't know that God worked through Cyrus.
But it says in the scriptures that he did.
It does, but the Cyrus cylinder itself does not.
No, I'm not talking. No, that's ridiculous, because it says in the religious scripture itself. You're questioning whether these religious denominations would believe that or not. So that is contingent upon the internal consistency of the Bible itself, not external factors.
Is Cyrus a Messiah?
Cyrus is not the Messiah, no.
Then why is he referred to as a Messiah in the Bible?
Because he's an anointed one.
But there are people who don't believe that he is. And the historical side of Cyrus. Harrow. And the historical side of Cyrus's cylinder, the proclamation of what he was going to do when he basically took over Babylon. The Cyrus cylinder disagrees with this, because he returned the religions and the temple building to all of the people of Mesopotamia, because the Jews were not the only ones that were in bondage there. He did it to everybody, because Cyrus, part of his campaign, Cyrus was very, very big on allowing the people of an area, allowing native people to continue their own beliefs. He did not force belief onto other people. He allowed them to keep their traditions, to keep their temples, to keep their... The Jews were included in that. It was all the people of Mesopotamia, not just the Jews. But the Bible is a Jewish-centric story. So the Jews interpreted it as if he was speaking to them specifically to allow them to rebuild the temple at Jerusalem, but he wasn't.
Give me a piece of scripture that would say this.
They called him the Messiah.
Where does it say in the text that Cyrus is the Messiah?
They referred to he is the only person other than Jesus to be given the title of Messiah as an anointed one sent by God to liberate the Jews.
Can you give me a piece of scripture that calls him? No, I want a piece of Old Testament scripture that refers to him as Messiah. I don't think that really even has relevancy to the point.
It does have relevancy to the point. The point is that the Bible is a Jewish-centric story, focused on the Jewish people and their experiences, but it is not reflected in the historical account, like the actual historical account or the archaeological account.
Yeah, but I don't understand though. I don't understand your point here though, because it just says that he was anointed, that God was going to do all of his pleasures through him.
That's what it's talking about. It's talking about
right.
that Cyrus is the only other person other than Christ himself who was given that title because he liberated the Jews and allowed them to rebuild their temple.
Like a verse that calls him Messiah. Give me a verse that calls him Messiah.
Harrow, stop. But Cyrus was the only one given this other than Christ. And the reason
you have yet to substantiate this claim. You're being irrational right here.
No, I'm not.
Give me a verse that says
Harrow, you've got to let me finish, dude. Cyrus liberated all of those people and allowed them to return to their faiths and rebuild their temples. In the Cyrus Cylinder itself, it actually states one of his proclamations was that he was returning the rights of the people of Mesopotamia who were liberated and to do this. That was his whole big thing, because Cyrus, for the time, was incredibly progressive, given the time period. Okay, so the Jews interpreted it as though he was speaking to them. So it's a Jewish-centric story. He restored the Jews' rights to rebuild the temple, to rebuild their temple. But he was talking to everyone. The Cyrus Cylinder states that he was speaking to everyone. He wasn't a Messiah. He simply liberated Babylon and then allowed everybody to continue their lives as normal under the new regime. That's it.
Okay.
But the Jews make an assumption about Cyrus with no justification because he allowed them to continue doing what they were doing. So they assume that because he did that, he was sent by God or anointed by God to give him the power to restore the Jews.
Okay.
So it's an assumption that's being made. And not to mention, the first big thing when it comes to the prophecy, these things were written down after the fact. So the oral tradition in and of itself is unreliable. The oral tradition passes down for decades, and then someone writes it down from the oral tradition, which essentially is you're relying upon a story that's passed hands over multiple generations, and then all of a sudden you have the story being written down that this was the prophecy, that this is when Christ was killed, this is what was said, and this is the prophecy that came true. How can you trust a prophecy that was written down after the fact by a person who was not present for either of the events, but was only given the information, not even secondhand or third hand, but generationally down the line in order to confirm the very thing that person believes?
So I would like to redirect the attention to the actual topic at hand, which is on the Daniel 70 weeks prophecy. This has no real relevancy to what we're talking about here. The only reason why this ever was brought up is because you said that certain denominations believe that God wouldn't work through a man like Artaxerxes, and then Cyrus got brought up as an anointed person that would do the pleasures of God. Not only does this not actually threaten the internal consistency of the Bible, because this is pertaining specifically to the Jewish God at their contemporary time.
No, I'm saying that there's ambiguity in that, and you can't rely on it because it's non-specific. That's what I'm saying.
There's no one saying though that proves the existence of God, though. No one's saying that.
No, I'm saying that the prophecy itself cannot be relied upon as evidence. It is insufficient. You cannot draw a conclusion from this. Just like the big defeater, that's why I brought up the siege of Tyre. Tyre has not been destroyed. Tyre was never destroyed. So there you go. And that was prophesied to occur directly, and it never happened.
Listen, okay, I could go on this prophecy of the destruction of Tyre, but I'm not going to, because it's not pertaining to what we're talking about. Okay. Like we're talking about the Daniel 70 weeks prophecy. Tell me why a denomination would say God
there's
wouldn't
some
work through a
groups that,
guy
there's
like
some groups that just don't believe that.
Not only that. No. Let me talk. Hold on. It's not even necessarily that God is working through this man Artaxerxes to make this thing happen, because the guy writing this account is called. Wait, hold on. Let me remember what he is called. He was a biblical figure, anyways. But it gives a specific time frame of when it was supposed to happen, right? He was somebody who is worked through as a biblical figure. So there's not really any claim to be made here that God would work through, say, God wouldn't work through
That's
figure.
not the point that I was bringing up. I was bringing up that there is too much ambiguity to give the prophecy any credibility.
How?
There's too much ambiguity.
It's so specific, though.
No, it was specific because it was written after the fact.
After what fact?
This was not written down at the time that it occurred, Harrow. The
Are
prophecy
you
was
saying
written,
that
this was committed to
Oh
paper
my.
after the fact. This was
Okay,
the
but
oral
here's the thing.
tradition.
That's presuppositional, though, because
No,
that
it's
doesn't.
not. No, it's not. We know
Yes,
archaeologically speaking
how
that
it's
these
let me
archaeologically speaking
explain.
that these were written down after the fact. Beforehand, they were oral tradition.
Okay, so let me explain why that's wrong.
So you're saying that they were written down before then.
Yeah, because there's divine authorship involved in it. So
That's
it's
a
not like
presupposition.
you're understanding. But here's the thing: you're being presuppositional here.
No, I'm not.
By
I'm going by
saying
the evidence.
no.
The
Listen,
evidence
man.
doesn't bear that
Be
out.
quiet and let me talk for a second, okay? What I'm trying to say here is the reason why you're being presuppositional is because you're assuming that a God doesn't exist and that there's no spiritual factors at hand to
I'm
play
not.
in here.
No, I'm
But
not.
here's the thing.
No, Harrow. No,
So
absolutely not. No,
let
Harrow,
me
I'm not
talk.
going to. No, I'm
Let
not
me
going to.
talk.
Harrow, stop. I'm not going to let that go. I am
I
not
let you talk,
presupposing
and
that
I haven't really
Harrow.
interrupted you.
No, you made a claim about me, and I'm not going to let it stand. Disproving the Bible does not disprove God. It would just mean, I mean, it's very possible that God could exist and we just screwed up the Bible. Disproving the Bible doesn't knock down God, just like proving evolution doesn't knock down God. These are mutually exclusive. These
Okay,
things
but that's
are not
not
mutually
pertaining to anything
exclusive.
that I'm talking to.
Okay.
That's not pertaining to anything of the conversation.
It is.
The reason why you're being
Harrow,
presuppositional is because you
stop.
imply. No, let me talk.
Harrow.
Let me talk.
Yes, you will.
You're getting really
Harrow.
defensive here for some
No, I'm
reason,
not
man. Come
defensive.
on.
You made a claim that I'm presupposing that God doesn't exist, and I'm not.
That's not what I said. Oh my goodness.
It is what you said.
No, it's not. I said that you presuppose divine authorship doesn't exist and that these things wouldn't be preserved by God. You presuppose that.
I'm not presupposing that. I'm saying that there's no evidence to conclude that it does.
Oh my goodness, man. I'm trying to say that if you go through the worldview, that this prophecy is prophesied at point A is preserved till point B, and then at point C, like 500 years later, this thing is prophesied and it happens, right? It comes to fruition. You can only really disprove the reliability of that by going through the presuppositional position that there is no divine authorship and preservation of
No.
these
I
texts.
examine the evidence and I come to the conclusion that it is insufficient to determine that divine authorship occurred. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's to presuppose that God wouldn't have preserved these texts in the first place. But it would have to prove that God preserved these texts for these things to have come to fruition in such accuracy.
No, that's not the way that works.
So you're saying that if there was a prophecy and it came true, the only way that would happen was if God preserved the text?
I'm saying that the Christian worldview, is that God preserved these texts, and that's why they came to fruition in such accuracy.
But they weren't super accurate, and you're presuming that it was kept in line by God.
But they were. Okay, can you explain to me where the ambiguity is here then?
Yes, the ambiguity is that the biggest one is the large window in which it has to take place. It didn't say a specific day, time, or year.
Yes, it did.
It did. What time did it say it was going to take place?
It said 483 years after the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem in their prophetic years that this thing would transpire within.
So that's 365 days that it could have occurred, right?
No, it's not days. It's it's weeks of years, sevens. That's the original word that's used, but we didn't have one in the KJV dialect to describe that metric of measurement.
And
can you read it again? Can you read the prophecy again?
You want me to read it?
Yeah. Like, what's the Bible verse that we can read this from?
Here, I'll just bring it out in my Bible right now. Give me a second.
Did he mention before which Bible verse this is?
Yeah, it's Daniel chapter 9, verse 24 through 27. So it's... Give me a moment.
I mean, it was also just brought up to me. It's also problematic because you're presupposing dispensationalism. So,
Dispensationalism. Do you know what that word means?
yes, I do know what it means.
Okay, so it means that God is talking to a specific people at a certain time, and that the applicability, or the applicability of that does not apply to us, since it is given at a certain time to a certain people. Now, tell me, how does dispensationalism pertain to the law, or which is of the law? It's a doctrine of the law. How does that pertain to what we're talking about?
That it came from God.
Right, but that's not dispensationalism. That's divine authorship.
Okay, Errol.
So what is the prediction here? 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's
prophesying.
70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the prince shall be given 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So that's 69 weeks, right, of the 70 weeks. 69, that would be 483 of their years that they use at the time. And this would have to, and this is the amount of time that it would take, right?
Wait, go back. So is after you said 70 weeks?
Restore and rebuild,
are they these,
to restore and rebuild Jerusalem? That's what happened.
One second. You said years at the time. Is that different from today's years? Is it like close to a year?
Yeah, it's different. Their years were 360 days.
Okay, so it's close enough to a year. So you said how many years?
No, it's not. It actually makes a huge difference. Actually,
how many years did you say this was supposed to happen in?
483.
483 years.
Yes.
That's a pretty big spectrum of time. This is not a very precise prediction.
But here's the thing. But that's exactly why it is so precise. It's because it says it is specifically supposed to happen right after this, like right within this 7-week period, or the 7-year period, rather. It is supposed to happen, right? Over the course of these 7 years. If it happens any other point, that's not what it is. It's
so
within these specific 7 years.
What is the 480 year thing?
The 483 years. Now, if you multiply 69 by 7, that's what it would equate to. And since they're using sevens here to describe years, so it would be 69 sevens. So if you go over the mathematical process by which you would assert how long it would take, it would equate to 483 years, or at the minimum, if I'm not mistaken, it's 476 years. So it has to happen from 476 years to 483 years after this point of time. Otherwise, it's not prophetic.
And what is supposed to happen
in this specific time?
And what is supposed to happen? What is supposed to happen? What is going to occur?
The Messiah shall be cut off, which is to say that he will be killed by a government. And that he's going to make reconciliation for sins, meaning he's going to forgive sins. He's going to make an end for sin. And he's going to bring in everlasting righteousness, which is to, I guess that could be
not real, because there wasn't any such thing.
Okay, well that's
so going down it. TJump is correct. There's too wide of a window in order to fit this in. 2, you can't discount the possibility.
How wide is the window? Do you think?
Arrow, stop. You can't discount.
How wide is the window? You can't. No. You got to go over these points individually. How wide is
you just said in between 400. It was 77627s. So essentially, it was less than 10 years, a 10-year window for this to take place.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still a window of time. It's a narrow window of time, but it's still a window of time.
Well,
Okay?
I'm not even seeing that because
Right.
it says 7 sevens and 62 sevens. That's a huge difference. And it doesn't say it's going to happen between these or before these or after these. It doesn't say any of that. So it doesn't seem like
It's like I said before.
Yeah.
There's too much
It's not
ambiguity
ambiguous.
there. There's too much ambiguity there, but that's not even that, is it? But then you
No,
look for-
because I've actually studied in this prophecy a lot, and there is absolutely no room for ambiguity whatsoever, other than the 7-week period in which this is supposed to take place within. You notice that in the very last verse in the prophecy, it talks about how there being 1 week left, meaning that it couldn't happen anytime before the 69th week, and it couldn't happen anytime after, because
where are you
there
getting
is
that?
specifically 1 week that's supposed to be left. It says in the 27th verse, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice
Well, it
and
says
the
7,
oblation to
right?
cease.
It says for 1 7. And in the middle of the
Yeah,
7.
one singular 7, which is left over from the 70 weeks after the 69th.
I don't see that anywhere. That seems like something you're adding in.
that's a jump. That's a jump you're making.
No, it's not.
War will continue until the end, and desolation have been decreed. So the end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end. Well, it didn't. There wasn't a continuous war. It didn't come like a flood. It came over several hundred years. Desolation have been decreed. I don't know what that means. There wasn't really much desolation. He will confirm a covenant with many
this is
for
prophecy that has
one.
yet to be fulfilled. What are you talking about?
So there's no evidence of it because it hasn't happened yet.
No, that's not true. It's saying that this final week has yet to happen.
So it hasn't happened yet. So it's
This is the thing. You're going off of your own interpretation, right? You're just looking over it lightly and not actually taking into consideration.
Well, it seems
any
like that's
of
what
the-
you're doing.
Any of the actual.
No, we're looking at it, Harrow. We're looking at it as objectively as possible without assuming anything beforehand.
Well, it seems like
Right. So wouldn't it make a little bit sense though to look over the interpretations of your enemies, right? In this circumstance, to determine whether it is correct or not, whether it's reasonable or not.
Yeah, but when you're doing that, when you're looking over what it is, number one, they're not our enemies.
Well,
okay?
I
Number
think.
two,
Can I
and number
jump in
two,
one
sorry,
sec?
hang on, TJump. When looking
Well,
over
you're
their
my
stuff,
enemy.
when looking over their stuff and what they believe, you don't assume what they believe. You want to determine what they believe is true.
Well, I think the
Which means-
problem here is that it doesn't matter. Like it's ambiguous. It doesn't say anything. Like a real
Right.
prediction is the world began 4.3 billion years ago. Like that's a prediction. This is not a prediction.
and also-
the fact that we have to
but
find
also
an
the point
interpretation
being-
is the problem. I gotta
And
go,
also the
guys. I'll
point
talk to you
being,
guys later.
Harrow, if I assume the position